Advisory Local Liquor Control Commission meeting. Before we start, though, I appreciate everyone being here today. We will have the liquor control meeting first. Before we start the city council meeting, please, your signs are not allowed in the meeting. So if you could lay them flat or stack them against the wall, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay, can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Kilman?
Here.
Commissioner Lose?
Present.
Commissioner Maxwell?
Present.
Commissioner Rice-Sanders?
Present.
Commissioner Doherty?
Present.
Commissioner Hill?
Here.
Chairperson Harvey?
Here. Item 2 on the agenda, citizens' comments for the Local Liquor Control Commission. Are there any citizens who wish to comment? Okay, item 3, general business of the Local Liquor Control Commission. Item 3.1, Ms. Sorrell, please.
Item 3.1 is Local Liquor Control Commission meeting minutes from January 9th, 2024. The recommended action is to approve those meeting minutes from the Local Liquor Control Commission meeting of January 9th, 2024.
Is there a motion? Mr. Doherty.
I move to approve the meeting minutes from the Local Liquor Control Commission meeting of January 9th, 2024.
Is there a second? Ms. Kilman.
I second.
Any discussion for council? Citizens' comments. Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Kilman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lose?
Yes.
Commissioner Maxwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Rice-Sanders?
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Chairperson Harvey?
Yes, and that motion passes. Item 3.2, Ms. Sorrell.
Item 3.2 is an application for an on-premises secondary restaurant from Little Pizza My Heart, LLC, doing as Pagliai's Pizza of Carbondale. Attached is an application from Little Pizza My Heart, LLC, doing business as Pagliai's of Carbondale, located at 509 South Illinois Avenue. The entity is seeking an on-premises secondary use restaurant liquor license with a video gaming rider. The current owners and operators of Pagliai's are selling the business to the owner of Little Pizza My Heart, LLC, the sale of which is set to close following approval of the liquor license contingent upon receipt of all outstanding items. For liquor code provisions, on-premise secondary use restaurant, sales of alcohol and or video gaming revenues are ancillary to the operation of the business. The principal source of revenue shall come from the sale of non-alcoholic beverages and food. There is no minimum age for entry. Procedure for issuing a license. Upon the filing of an application for a liquor license, the application shall be reviewed by city staff for completeness, accuracy, and recommendation to the commission. The application will then be considered at the next available Liquor Commission meeting. The applicant shall be notified of the date of said meeting not less than 3 business days in advance. Failure of the applicant to accept, read, or review the notice, whether provided by mail, email, or telephone, does not constitute improper notification by the Commission. The Commission shall receive and may require such evidence deemed necessary to make findings based upon the standards and the factual criteria set out below and elsewhere in the Liquor Code. After the hearing, the Commission may grant a license contingent upon receipt of all outstanding items if it is determined that the grant of the license would not be detrimental to the general welfare of the city. The Commission may deny an application or may require changes to the applicant's plans in order to establish grounds for the issuance of the license if they find that the application meets one or more of the factual criteria listed below. Outstanding items. The $100 application fee has been paid. The criminal history check did not reveal anything which would preclude the applicant from holding a liquor license. The current license holder at this location must surrender their liquor license before a new license can be issued to the applicant. The staff's recommendation is to approve. The license classification is appropriate for the operation, and the location and parking are fitting for a restaurant. The recommended action: either approve the issuance of the on-premises secondary use restaurant liquor license with video gaming rider, contingent upon receipt of outstanding items. Approve the issuance of the on-premises secondary use restaurant liquor license without the video gaming rider, contingent upon receipt of all outstanding items, or deny the on-premises secondary use restaurant liquor license based on one or more provisions of the liquor code.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Ms. Rice-Sanders.
I would like to ask a question.
Is there a motion, please?
Okay, I move, let her do it. I'm not.
Ms. Gilman.
I'd like to move to approve the issuance of the on-premises secondary use restaurant liquor license with the video gaming rider contingent upon receipt of all outstanding items.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Hill.
I second.
Okay, now discussion. Ms. Rice-Sanders.
I would like to know if the applicants are here.
Talking to the mic.
I would like to know if the applicants are here.
Could you come to the mic, please?
Come to the mic, please. Thank you.
Could you here? Yeah, yes, please. And would you state your name for the record, please?
Kristen Gatsis.
Okay.
Okay, can you, I understand that Paliaz is selling the establishment.
Yes.
And you're going to take over, are you buying the?
Yes, I'm buying
Okay.
I'm buying the
Okay.
business.
Okay, all right. Can you tell me about the gaming that you're wanting to put in?
Melissa had started her application, and we wanted to continue with the gaming in the
Who is
establishment.
Melissa?
I'm sorry, the owner of Polly Eyes,
Okay,
the current owner. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And we wanted to also continue with that, with the gaming in the restaurant as well.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Did you have other questions for her, Ms. Rice-Sanders? No. Any other questions or comments from council? This side. This side. Citizens' comments? Okay. Roll call, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Killman,
Yes.
Commissioner Lose,
Yes.
Commissioner Maxwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Rice-Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Chairperson Harvey.
Yes, and that motion passes. There being no other business to come before the Local Liquor Control Commission, we will adjourn this meeting and we'll start City Council shortly. 6:25, and we'll call the meeting to order. Could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Kilman,
Here.
Councilmember Lose,
Present.
Councilmember Maxwell,
Present.
Councilmember Rice-Sanders,
Present.
Councilmember Doherty,
Present.
Councilmember Hill,
Present.
Mayor Harvey.
Present. And next on the, before that, I'd like to acknowledge our city manager, Mr. Williams, our city clerk, and staff who are present. Next on the agenda, item 5.2, citizens' comments and questions. Please be seated. I'll call on you. You don't have to stand. Oh, thank you. Citizens may address the City Council for up to 4 minutes on any agenda item, and for items not listed on the agenda during the citizens' comment portion of the meeting. Public comments will be accepted for a maximum of 30 minutes per agenda item. Those wishing to address the City Council should raise their hand to be recognized by the mayor prior to approaching the podium. Speakers should provide their name for the minutes and end their comments when the 4-minute time limit is announced. The council may suspend or waive the speaker time limit with the consent of majority of the council present and are not required to respond to public remarks during the meeting. Public comments, each agenda shall include an item entitled Public Comments for matters that are not on the printed agenda. All other agenda items will also include an opportunity for the public to comment in accordance with the rules adopted and codified by the City Council. Members of the public may address the City Council with comments regarding only those items that are relevant to city business, such as information about city events, issues that the municipality has the authority to address, and items that the City Council has previously or may in the future consider or vote on. The mayor shall strictly restrict comments and questions to matters that are relevant to the city business and shall not permit repetitious comments. The City Council and staff are not required to respond to comments or questions. Public comments are to be directed to the City Council as a whole and not to individual council members or individual city staff. And I would ask that you would watch the clock on the screen, please. Ms. Latecki.
Good evening, Sandy Latecki. I have some visual aids with me tonight. I'm representing Keep Carbondale Beautiful, and we encourage all citizens to go out and pick up trash. We have orange bags like this at Hickory Lodge on the side porch. We also have gloves, and you can leave the orange bags on the street corner, and the city will pick them up. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman here, yes. I couldn't see your face.
I'm Connor Sullivan Aedo, and like many here today, I'm here to give comments on the ongoing war in Gaza. My original plan for my comment was to give a speech explaining in depth how Israel's campaign against Gaza qualifies as a genocide, but I realized that the 4-minute time limit would not be sufficient for that. So I'm writing an in-depth letter that I should be emailing to each of you, if not by tomorrow, then certainly by the end of the week. I'm currently up to 7 pages now. I urge you all to read it in full and carefully consider its implications, because it's a very serious matter and probably one of the most well-researched, heavily researched letters that I've had to write. I commented on the war last week, like many others, and I couldn't help but notice that an anonymous member of our community complained about alleged anti-Semitism at that council meeting. All I can really say in response is that if anyone believes that I am an anti-Semite, I challenge them to meet with me and discuss the issue over dinner. I think you would be surprised at where my heart really lies on this issue. My interest and why I'm so passionate about this is because I believe in universal human rights and upholding international law. That's why I'm up here today, but the council's likely asking themselves why they need to comment on this war, why there is a compelling need for a city council to pass a ceasefire resolution. It's an important question. It's a fair question to ask. Many of our Carbondale community members are themselves Palestinian, and they have families still in the Palestinian territories whose lives are threatened by this war. Some of them are here today. They may give speeches on their own personal experiences, so I shall not speak for them. But this is obviously a matter that affects many members of our community personally, and they're looking for leadership. More to the point, the United States is the primary patron and main backer of Israel, and the federal government wields considerable influence over this war, considerable leverage. Case in point, when Israel invaded Lebanon, what ended up making them stop the war was the White House threatening to revoke all aid and support, bringing the war to a standstill. We still have this leverage, yet the White House is choosing not to take advantage of it. For this reason, many city councils across the country are passing ceasefire resolutions, and with more voices being raised, it will raise the political pressure on the White House to take the much-needed action and put an end to this destructive conflict. But as it continues to go on, the atrocities to continue to mount. To give you a snapshot of what Palestinians have been suffering in just the past few days, Israeli tanks ambushed an entire family, killing everybody in the car except for a 6-year-old girl named Hind Rajab. She called emergency services pleading for help. The Red Crescent tried to coordinate an evacuation with the Israeli army. They were promised safe passage, and then for 2 weeks, nobody heard word from them. Just the other day, it finally emerged that as soon as the ambulance arrived, the Israeli tanks blew it up, and then they killed the 6-year-old girl anyway, in cold blood. Amnesty International just released a report detailing deadly use of force in the occupied West Bank, and they recount such atrocities like IDF soldiers shooting a teenage boy in front of his family, and then shooting his father when he rushed to his son's aid, opening fire on peaceful protests, shooting at ambulances, killing civilians in the streets, and then blocking paramedics from treating them and leaving until they were left to bleed to death. Israel itself runs a racist gore channel called 72 Virgins Uncensored, in which they broadcast to the public images celebrating violence against Palestinians and barbaric videos of them mutilating corpses. Perhaps the worst one I saw was of an IDF soldier posing next to 3 civilians that he had killed execution style.
Okay, your time is up in order to allow others to speak. Okay,
Fair
if
enough.
you agree with what's been said so that we don't have repetition, if you agree, please stand. Agree
with what?
With what he just said. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and move the mic a little bit closer,
Yes, ma'am.
please.
My name is Yara Hindi. Is that good? Perfect. And I'm a student at SIU and a proud resident of the city of Carbondale. I stand before you today not just as a resident, but as a Palestinian American with a moral obligation to speak on the events unfolding in our world today. I implore our council to endorse this crucial resolution for a ceasefire. This endorsement is not only for the sake of the many lives lost in Palestine, but it is for the safety and assurance of our community here, sending a powerful message that our city strongly opposes the loss of civilian lives. As I stand before you, more than 20,000 Palestinians have been slaughtered, with 11,000 being children. The anguish we feel is far from indescribable. Our ability currently to intervene is incredibly minuscule, and the council listening to us today represents one of the few avenues through which we can get our voices heard. I stand here today not just as an advocate for my people, but as a grieving human being urging us all to recognize the urgency of this situation. Gaza no longer has any functional hospitals in the north. There is nowhere safe for the people of Gaza to evacuate other than going to the Sinai Peninsula. 1.9 million Palestinians have been displaced, seeking refuge in Rafah, and they have now been asked to evacuate by the Israeli government. As we speak, Rafah is being attacked via drone strikes and bombings. Rafah is one of the most densely populated areas in the world, with millions of people fighting to survive against apocalyptic conditions. Intense bombing, no sleep, grieving of family members, tents as shelters, and a fight against famine. It is morally indefensible to turn a blind eye to the suffering of innocent lives. Rejecting a resolution aimed at expressing our commitment to peace would be a disservice to our community. We, the constituents of this city, hope to witness our council's unwavering support for our community and its stance against violence and suffering. In endorsing this ceasefire resolution, we not only stand on the side of justice, but also reaffirm our dedication to the well-being of all, regardless of borders. I believe that as a united community, we send a profound message that Carbondale stands for peace, justice, and the protection of human lives. Thank you for your time.
When you clap, I really can't tell how many people agree. I'll ask you to stand after comments if you agree, please. Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Adams.
Jane Adams, Carbondale. Aristotle observed many centuries ago that some of the most distressing conflicts are those where virtues collide. In this room, we see this starkly revealed. There's the virtue of compassion, which is disturbed by human misery and suffering and seeks peace. We all seek peace, I think, everybody in this room. There's also the virtue of loyalty and courage, which calls on individuals and countries to defend themselves when brutally attacked. I believe the City Council should not take up nor pass any resolution regarding the war between...
Please do not interrupt, please. That's rude, and you didn't do it when the other person was speaking.
Should not take up any resolution regarding the war between Israel and Hamas, either supporting Israel or supporting Hamas.
Okay, if you do it again, we will have you removed. Please do not interrupt.
The war could end tomorrow. It could end immediately. Hamas could surrender control of Gaza and free the hostages. The Israelis would cease firing. The rebuilding could begin. Regarding the call for a ceasefire, without the release of Israeli hostages and the freeing of the people of Gaza from Hamas rule, it is a tactic for supporting Hamas. Much closer to home, Carbondale is the center of two communities that feel endangered by the passions aroused by this war: Jews and Muslims. This town has a long and unfortunate history of being unwelcoming to immigrants and people who are not Protestant Christians. I believe that this City Council and the larger community have made major strides over the past decades to make the city more welcoming. Our elected officials, I would remind everybody in this room, represent all members of our community, not just one sector of our community. We are the regional center for adherents of every world religion, a source of great pride to me. It would be several steps backward for the city to officially declare that the city is welcoming to adherents of one faith, but not another. As important, were the city to accede to the demand for a resolution demanding a ceasefire, it would put members of both communities at risk, Jewish and Muslim. Our troops are not fighting in Israel, nor in Gaza. The Palestinians and the Israelis must decide their own fate, and we should pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Please do not. I've asked you please to not do that. Please, everyone has a right to their opinion. They don't have to agree with your opinion. Please do not do that. If you agree with the comments that were just made, would you please stand?
Your Honor, I would like to raise a point of order, if I may.
Please stop.
No.
Please. This is exactly how wars start. Please don't do that. Can we be civil, please? Yes, sir.
There is a point of order. Your Honor.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes. So, we have rules governing public comment, and part of the rules are that the comments need to be germane to the city of Carbondale and its business. And it is absolutely debatable whether this is. We're allowing it to happen. If we cannot have people behaving reasonably, I would at that point call a point of order and ask that we shut down comment on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Lose.
So any more disturbances?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. To the mic, please.
Good evening, Council.
You can move the mic up so you can, yeah, thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jake Minkus, and I'm a proud Jewish American who believes that the need for a ceasefire resolution is imperative. As we navigate the occupation and advocate for a permanent ceasefire, it's crucial to acknowledge the perspectives that shape our understanding of resistance and survival. For me, the descendant of Holocaust and pogrom survivors, the actions of Palestinian resistance groups evoke parallels with the Jewish resistance during the Holocaust, in which my ancestors took part in. My perspective is rooted within my deep-seated belief that in the face of existential threats, individuals and communities will do whatever is necessary to ensure their survival and preserve the possibility of a future for their descendants. During the Holocaust, Jewish resistance took many forms, from acts of armed resistance in ghettos and concentration camps to clandestine efforts to save lives through underground networks and partisan movements. These acts of defiance, often carried out in the face of overwhelming odds, were motivated by a fierce determination to resist dehumanization and uphold the dignity of the Jewish people. Similarly, Palestinian resistance groups have emerged in response to decades of occupation, displacement, and dispossession. Their methods may vary, ranging from armed struggle to civil unrest, but their underlying motivation remains consistent: the desire to resist oppression and secure a better future for themselves and for everybody else. While the circumstances may differ, I understand the fundamental human impulse driving both Jewish and Palestinian resistance is the same: the refusal to accept subjugation and the commitment to fight for freedom, justice, and dignity. Let it be said that the use of violence as a means of resistance is a deeply divisive issue, one that raises difficult moral and ethical questions about the legitimacy of armed struggle in pursuit of political goals. However, we are not one to judge the hungry by their table manners. As we strive to understand the complexities of the occupation, it's essential to approach the topic with nuance, empathy, and a commitment to dialogue, not arguments. By engaging in honest and respectful conversations, we can foster greater understanding and empathy across divides, ultimately moving closer to the goal of achieving a just and lasting peace for all. In closing, let us remember the resilience and determination of those who have resisted oppression throughout history, from the Jewish fighters of the Holocaust and pogroms to the Palestinian activists of today. Let us honor their courage and sacrifice by working tirelessly to create a world where the rights and dignity of all people are respected and upheld by voting in favor for a ceasefire. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone who has an opposing opinion? Anyone else? Okay. Mr. Cooper. And Mr. Davis, how much time do we have left in the 30 minutes? 4 minutes?
13 minutes.
13 minutes, okay.
My name is James Cooper, Jr., Honorable Medical Discharge for
the
asthma.
mic up, please. There we go.
Disabled African-American veteran. For the record, note Carbondale City Attorney Jamie Snyder, Carbondale Police Chief Stan Reno, who are white, are present. What I say is city business. First Amendment right, freedom of speech, the right to express one's thought and opinions without government restrictions as guaranteed by the First Amendment. For months, the powers that be have been trying to kick me out of city council meetings and hide the cover up against me. Soon I'll be back continuing my peaceful protest outside Carbondale City Hall on the sidewalk regarding the corruption and injustice against me by authorities and the powers that be. Carbondale Mayor Carolyn Harvey, Carbondale City Council, Jackson County State's Attorney Joe Cervantes, the FBI, 5th District Appellate Court Clerk John Flood, Williamson County State's Attorney Ted Thompson, Jackson County Clerk Cindy Savanda, U.S. Senator Richard Durbin, and others are being certified mail. My February 10, 2024 declaration affidavit that I, James Cooper Jr., told Carbondale Mayor Carolyn Harvey, Carbondale City Council members, and others that I, well under 18, was sexually abused in the 1982 Upper Band Program overnight summer camp in the dormitory at SIUC by the director, Raylan Young, and assistant director, Diane Wilson. And my February 10, 2024 declaration affidavit that I told Jamal Cooper, Sherry Cooper, Carla Johnson, and others that the authorities are trying to kill me and have home, vehicle, phone illegally wiretapped, illegal GPS, and my Fifth Amendment right is invoked at all times for my life. Additionally, for years, including this time, I'm mailing my affidavits to Carbondale NAACP, President Linda Flowers, various black churches, including Olivet Free Will Baptist Church, Bishop Albert Ingram Jr., Hopewell Baptist Church, Pastor Christopher Swims, and others. My declaration affidavits are being taken to Jackson County Clerk's office to be filed on that day. However, some in the clerk's office are making inaccurate entries for my docket sheet for my 1992 Jackson County Court wrongful conviction, case number 92 CF-A5, which I'm still pursuing the appeal and still seeking an attorney. Combined with these said injustices outside the record, unknown to Jackson County Judge David Watt Jr., my sentence/judgment hearing August 31st, 1992, when Jackson County Assistant Prosecutor Amanda Robinson, a racist, prosecutorial misconduct, Lutheran Social Service, Marion, Illinois, and my corrupt defense attorney, John McDermott, broke the law and covered up the mentioned child sexual abuse against me and many other black boys, likely hundreds over the years, and did not present a written report or oral testimony from my counselor, Sadell Mitchell of Lutheran Social Service, regarding my June 25th, 1992, counsel/last recall of sexual abuse against me. After years, in response to the authorities' continuous harassment, torture, even tried to politically assassinate me, including medically, and still trying to kill a third member of my family, they're raising hell, complaining, and writing up false police reports that I'm breaking the law. I, in front of the Carbondale City Council members and others as witness, have tried many times to surrender to authorities, but Police Chief Stan Reno, the FBI, and others refused to arrest me. One would think the authorities would be happy I said I surrendered. However, some in the FBI and other agents are still trying to frame me for any felony, and WSIL at TV and the Southern Illinois newspaper won't report it. Some in the VA and others in on the conspiracy against me are still trying to make my diagnosed mental and physical disabilities by many white military and VA doctors, including but not limited to schizoaffective mental disorder, asthma, sleep apnea, allergic rhinitis with polyps into some type of fraud. Might I add, multiple tests were ran for my diagnosed conditions, all of my medical records, such as psych tests, CAT scans, MRIs, sleep study tests, and so on. And though several of my VA disabilities were filed October 12, 2017, my VA intended to file April 12, 2017, the VA hasn't sent me a new correct decision, said in the latest letter to me for over 6 months ago, dated July 6, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Greg Holthouse, SI Property Management. I'm here today to speak in regards to the Licensure Act that you're all looking to bring.
That will be when we get to that item on the agenda.
Oh, I thought you sorry.
Okay. Did you have something to comment that's not on the agenda?
I'm sorry, I thought you were asking for the next person. I'll step aside.
Yeah. Yes, sir. In the glasses. No, in the glasses.
Good evening.
Could you move the mic down and provide your name, please?
My name is Dean Amley. I am honored, flattered, and humbled for the opportunity to stand before you and share my experience. At one of the protests, a man driving by said to us, "Go back to your country." He must have forgotten that this is not his native country either. And he must have forgotten that many Palestinians are not here by choice. I am a proud Palestinian American, born in Kuwait because my parents were forced from the West Bank and Jerusalem in Nakba 1948. Like our comrades who were forced from their homes in Africa, Asia, Australia, and the Americas. I did not get to be born in my native country due to colonization. Some of my family fled soon after, and when we arrived in the United States, we adapted to our new situation. I went to SIU and graduated in 1987 in the electrical engineering. But returning to my land was always my goal. I tried to return first to Kuwait, but was soon displaced again, this time by the Gulf War. I have family currently facing displacement in Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood in Jerusalem. My cousin's wife there was even forced to give birth in detention. Colonialism is the enemy. It is the enemy of all the oppressed people of the world. It is the enemy of the indigenous people here in Africa, in Palestine, and everywhere else. Mr. Malcolm X said in 1964 that the greatest weapon the colonial power have used in the past against our people has always been divide and conquer. This is why we must come together as a community and call for an end to the destruction. It's not true that our struggle is anti-Semitic. Many of the groups in the United States leading protests are Jewish, such as Jewish Voice for Peace, and they will tell you that the struggle is anti-Zionist. Zionism is a colonial ideology. Judaism is a religion. We all wish to see a Palestine where everyone is free to practice their religion, but where nobody is free to destroy another based on their race and religion. We follow the footsteps of anti-apartheid activists, civil rights leaders, and freedom fighters when we call for an end to the violence in my home of Palestine. I am a proud U.S. citizen, business owner, SIU alumni, and a member of this community for 40 years. We are here tonight to ask Carbondale to side with peace. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abdullah. I'm a graduate student here at SIU. First, I'd like to thank you all for having us here tonight. I'm here tonight as a representative of the Palestinian people. To be given a voice marks the beginning of a strong alliance. My family left Gaza years ago and came to these lands to seek greater opportunities that can both be mutually beneficial to Americans and Palestinians. My parents left everything behind for my sisters and I to have a life here. But we never forgot what was left behind. We would oftentimes revisit our homeland, and unfortunately we would witness the violence. Currently, my mother and sister are in Rafah. They are U.S. citizens who went to Gaza to spend time with family and haven't been able to leave since the beginning of the war. They've been displaced many times in Gaza and are now by the Rafah border waiting to leave. They are in good spirits and remain steadfast, but there's no guarantee that they will return. My mother is an instructor here at John A. Logan Community College, and my sister is a senior accountant at the KPMG accounting firm. They are both valuable members of the American society, along with many other Palestinians. You will find that most of us have degrees. We are doctors, lawyers, engineers, and businessmen who proudly serve the American people. An American-backed ceasefire for Gaza would be an excellent first step in establishing diplomatic relations with the members of the Palestinian people here in America and all over the world. We seek nothing more than justice, peace, and prosperity for all. And as a proud American-born Palestinian, you will find us willing to work together to establish a prosperous relationship. Thank you for your time.
Okay, because we did that, we're done with that discussion. I've asked you multiple times not to do that. We'll move on. Is there anyone else who has comments not regarding this subject? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Harvey and Council. My name is Marcella Woodson. And
could you move the mic closer, please?
I can. How is that? Okay. Good evening. My name is Marcella Woodson, and I'm Interagency Events and Media Coordinator for Carbondale United and Addicts Community Service Board. I'm just here today to give current announcements of events that will be coming up in the community. At Carbondale United on tomorrow, we'll be hosting our Fall in Love with You Valentine's Day meetup. It's going to be at 6 o'clock p.m. We'll have refreshments and gifts. There will also be some games. And I think this is the 4th year that Carbondale United has actually done this on Valentine's Day. In addition to that, on Monday, February 19th, the Black Hair Story, a Black History Month event, will be taking place at 309 East Jackson Street. That's the Collaboration Center. The event on tomorrow will also be at that same location. And this is a presentation on natural hair presentations, braiding lessons, barber demonstrations, and natural and mixed hair care. Pizza will be provided at this event as well. And you can register online at Carbondale United. And then also, in addition to that, on Thursday, February the 22nd, Carbondale United will be hosting their monthly grief support program. And that's at 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. This is a healing circle, and you can bring photos of loved ones and favorite items of loved ones to share as well. Last but not least, February 29th, the monthly Create Your Future, Stop the Gun Violence community meeting will be held again at the Collaboration Center, 309 East Jackson, here in Carbondale from 6 p.m. to 7 o'clock p.m. This month's topic is How Can I Help? And this will be on Zoom or in person. That concludes my announcements for Carbondale United. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No. Okay, we'll move on with the... Is there anyone else who has citizens' comments? Yes.
Good evening, everybody. Barry Spain. No longer live in the city, live at 107 Crabapple Lane in Carbondale, just outside the city limits. Come today, and I don't represent Jackson County Mass Transit Authority or anything like that. So, but however, this morning went to work there and discovered that they're paving the road out in front of there, which is all great and dandy. But also heard and seen that indeed they are doing it, destroying all the parking spots in front of 608 H College, and I hear all the way down through Jackson County Mass Transit in front there. And I also hear, and there's too many rumors flying around, so I don't know that any of it's true, but I heard that as they're tearing it up, they're going to leave the parking spaces in front of those places as dirt. Now, if that's true, I would find that totally unacceptable and can't see why the Planning Commission or the City Council would have ever approved such a thing. It just sounds absurd, and I hope it is absurd, but if it is indeed true, I would hope that tomorrow morning you would stop that before they tear it all completely up in front of our parking spaces, and let them know that, at least minimally, instead of leaving it as dirt, you're going to put decent quality gravel down, if nothing else. And like I say, I hope indeed it's not true and that they'd replace it with asphalt and or concrete parking spaces, or leave it alone until they're going to do whatever they're going to finally do with all those buildings when they decide eventually. I'm sure that eventually someday they're coming down, but don't know when, but I'm sure it'll eventually happen. Thank you very much for just hearing me. Have a good day. Good to see you all again.
Okay. Mr. Williams will address that.
Mr. Spain, I don't know exactly, the extent of the rumor that you're talking about, but we are going to be removing some parking. It's in front of the building. It used to be a former city's maintenance building, and it's where Toys for Tots does their programs in November through Christmas. All of those buildings are unoccupied, with the exception the warming center's there. Jackson County Mass Transit's in the process of going to a different location.
Eventually, yeah, that's going to take forever and a day. I can tell that. I'll probably be retired or 85 before that happens. Retired or 85.
Well, yeah, I can't speak to timing, but as we were doing this project, there was some parking there that just no one felt was needed, and so we're going to have that removed, and it'll be restored with green space.
Okay.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone else? Okay, we'll move on with the agenda. Item 5.3, council comments, general announcements, and proclamations. Are there any council members who wish to comment? Mr. Hill.
All right. So Friday, April 12th, 2024, I will be hosting a birthday celebration for myself / a fundraiser. Ginger, that's not funny. Let me restate it. I'm having a community birthday celebration / a fundraiser for 3 to 4 charities. I'm still waiting for one to call me back if they'll accept it or not. So yeah, I just want to invite the community out to come and enjoy some food and some music and some games, and hopefully you bring your wallets and your checkbooks and cash. I take Cash App, Zelle, PayPal. I'll take it all for the donations. But yeah, April 12th, it's going to be here from 5:30 to 7:30. So yeah, just be coming out ready to chill out and have some fun with me.
Ms. Kilman.
So firstly, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know this was an interesting meeting, a little tense. I appreciate no matter what direction you're approaching the issue from, on a sort of thread of continuity, there are requests for peace, which I don't ever think is irresponsible to advocate for. How or if the city goes about doing that is obviously up for debate among the people of Carbondale. I am happy to be here receiving all of your thoughts on the matter, and I appreciate you all coming out tonight. I'm going to sort of change subject a little bit and say, on the one hand, when the mayor's giving you a directive to speak in a certain way, it's a sort of language that council's able to understand. We're able to get support for things or gauge public opinion in certain ways. And Carolyn's doing her very best to control an obviously large crowd tonight. And so when she makes a request of you to abide by a certain sort of linguistic form, and that is, if you support something, please stand, keep the noise at a minimum, so that way she can interpret who supports what and how things are to flow, it would make it a lot easier for everyone on council, and I'm sure on Carolyn, if you abided by those sorts of rules. Now, I wanted to talk about something slightly different. I hadn't had the opportunity to meet with anyone on council about it yet, or to talk to Gary, but I did send him my notes. I recently came back from an opportunity that I was given the ability to partake in Phoenix, Arizona. And it was a convening called Local Government 2030, which was a think tank of a diverse array of individuals with vested interests in the success of local government. And I was one of 10 selected, hand-picked local elected officials from across the United States and treated to present Carbondale and our relation to the National Association of Public Administration's Grand Challenges. I've been involved with the project since the middle of last year, And along with local government staff members from around the nation and the presidents and CEOs and the directors of the professional associations that work with local governments, we wound up defining solutions to some of the challenges we face right here in Carbondale. The presentation that I gave of Carbondale was considered memorable enough that we now have offers from staff and associations to have me either speak at their upcoming conferences about Carbondale and the use of nationwide staffing resources across the United States from various local communities who were inspired enough about the work that we do here in our little town that they've committed to devote their resources and labor to implementing pilot programs based on the initiatives that we all developed over the course of 15 months or more of work. They all agree that Carbondale is worth helping if we are willing to accept their help. This think tank of association staff and elected officials work tirelessly on 3 project areas that we can implement here at any time with free technical assistance from the associations and project staff. Those are Promised Pathways, the Communications Continuum, and GROW, which is also termed as Workforce Resiliency. The Promised Pathways group would like to connect us to hiring and HR policies to onboard the 1/3 of the United States with a criminal record, creating an inverse of the school-to-prison pipeline by expanding hiring policies to include those with a criminal record where appropriate, creating a prison or criminal record to public service pipeline. This creates an 8 times reduction in the rate of recidivism. 87% of local government professionals indicated a willingness to work with someone that had a background like this. I can forward other statistics to council, as well as proposed language, contact information, and presentation notes to any of you interested in working on the implementation of this in Carbondale. This is presented as a potential antidote to our staffing shortages and hiring difficulties that are faced nationwide, utilizing an array of untapped skills in what Promised Pathways calls the lived experience professional. The GROW Resilient Workforce Group has developed a pilot that includes a self-assessment tool on how friendly we are as an employer to our public service professionals. This rigorous assessment tool in our supplementary documentation is then scored by a team of local government professionals via rubric, and then we are issued a pass notice, which will give us an accreditation certifying us as a public service professional-friendly employer that should give us a competitive edge when recruiting and scouting top talent. Or, if we don't meet a passing score, we'll be issued a review notice where the same staff will dedicatedly work with us to improve our score with the goal of eventual accreditation. The Communications Continuum has developed a philosophical outlook on how internal communications training for all staff turns staff into a positive force multiplier for eventual community engagement, while creating a sense of internal pride and a shared language as storytellers for our town. The thought came up in Phoenix for Carbondale to cross-collaborate with our communications team here at the city, our HR department, SIU comms department, and professional facilitators we've used previously to develop a system of internal communications trainings and methods unique to Carbondale with the express intent of creating a culture here that empowers all staff to communicate on behalf of the city to the best of their ability, as the findings indicated that staff are all communicating at present for the city, whether we or they know it and whether or not they are trained as communicators. It's imperative that we take advantage of the opportunity to help our staff be the very best here in Carbondale. I also think that council should take the communications training developed by our city and play an active role in shaping how we tell our story. All of these are concretely implementable, relatively low-hanging fruit, and there's been considerable buy-in on these initiatives from the professional associations. Because of my involvement and attendance, Carbondale's positioned to be ahead of a curve that is going to be a nationwide target for local governments to implement by 2030. Our society, as we built it, is in some ways at risk. Southern Illinois sits at the tail end of our state's list of priorities in some ways, and we experience diminishing returns on what we've known as our methods for surviving as a culture. And we must find a way to homogenize where there is no social cohesion, as I think we've seen tonight, and adapt to become more competitive if we want to survive. Civilizations in their winter are disinclined toward abstract thinking and creatively uninspired, but we owe it to ourselves and our motto to keep an open mind about what the future can be and re-energize ourselves into a Carbondale spring. Carbondale can be an example for other governments to look to when thinking about how to solve their own unique problems and raise our regional and national status to the place we all know we've got in us.
Thank you. Any other council comments on this side? No? Any comments on Mr. Lose?
Against my better judgment, I'm going to refrain from comment on all of this.
Thank you.
But I will suggest that if there are people who came here just for all of this and would like to leave, maybe we could.
Got it.
You got it? Great.
Got it. Okay, next on our agenda is item, any other council comments on this side? No. Okay, item 5.4, Ms. Sorrell.
Whereas February is the month traditionally designated as National Black History Month in the United States of America, and whereas during National Black History Month, we celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development, and whereas knowledge and understanding of African American history provides personal and intellectual development, advances communication and understanding between individuals and their families, their schools, and community. And whereas the 2024 theme, Art of Resistance, will highlight the artists who use their crafts to uplift the race, speak truth to power, and inspire a nation. And whereas the city of Carbondale, Illinois, continues to work toward becoming an inclusive community in which all citizens are respected and recognized for their contributions to our community. Now, therefore, I, Carolyn Harvey, Mayor of the City of Carbondale, Illinois, do hereby proclaim February 2024 as National Black History Month in the City of Carbondale, Illinois, and encourage all citizens to respectfully celebrate our diverse heritage and cultures, ordered this 13th day of February 2024.
Thank you. Before we move on with our agenda, I'd like to thank each of you for being here tonight. I would encourage you to come to other city council meetings. I understand your passion also. When it's close to your heart, I know how it feels. But, this is the big but, you must be respectful of others. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. If others had booed when you commented, that wouldn't have been the thing to do. So I say all of that to say we're about to move on with the rest of the agenda. If you are here for just that issue and would like to move on, move out before we do the rest of the agenda, please do so now. Okay, so the next item on the agenda, we have two public hearings and a special presentation. The first is item 6.1. Mr. Williams.
Item 6.1 is a presentation on the proposed permanent stage to be located in the 200 block of South Washington Street. We have our architect here, our project manager that will run through the I think we're about 30% drawings right now. We're requesting council feedback, ask questions. Before we go any further, we'd like to let you guys know where we're at.
My name's Mark Bowman. I'm the project manager for City of Carbondale. We went out for request for qualifications for an architect firm to design and develop the new event plaza that will be built in the Washington Street Plaza. Thad Heckman with the Design Works was the winning architect, and he's here just to share some of the design features we have on the plaza.
Good evening, Mayor Harvey and City Council. My name's Thad Heckman. I'm local architect with Design Works. And as always, anytime I'm in front of council in the city, I'm especially pleased to present designs. And again, thank everyone, all of you guys, for allowing me the opportunity to design for the city. I will be brief. The project shown on screen is somewhat of an outdoor pavilion. It is closed and secure, but it is intended for a music venue, entertainment, and event plaza for musical as well as spoken word, etc. I want to mention importantly that on August in 2021, we had an all-call musicians meeting, of which many of the area musicians assembled next door and reviewed design concepts. That meeting was again repeated just a little over a month ago in mid-December to confirm the design that you're seeing tonight. I'm especially pleased to say that this is with the input of not only our local musicians who had valuable insight, but many others, and especially city staff. The stage is centered. We're facing north. Unfortunately, the stage is down. That seems counterintuitive, but south is up, north is down on the screen, and there's a quite large stage, again, vetted by our local musicians, with a stage right for offloading a truck that will be backing in off Washington Street. On the left side, as if you were on the stage, is a green room with a private area off the green room, a small office for ticketing and that type of thing, lockable, of course, public toilets, and small janitor's requirements, all complying with current ADA and relevant codes. Jeff, can I have the next slide, please? Here's elevations. The top right is as if you were standing in the plaza grassy area. I should have probably pointed out initially that this site, for those not aware, is exactly 1 block east of here. And again, I'm facing south, so we would be looking at the face of the building as if we were there attending the entertainment venue. It is in the tradition of the new train station that I'm pleased to thank again everyone for allowing me that opportunity. But literally, materials and composition is intentionally reflecting the new train station design, of which even some of the material colors and things are borrowed from City Hall to provide a unified appearance to downtown. Large screens on the side for close-up views, that type of thing. Again, we have coordinated with an acoustic consultant out of Chicago that literally I've known for years and is literally world-class, very insightful, as well as local theater people, etc. Next slide, Jeff. This is on the boring technical side that I think architects are required to show people. These are sections through the building as if you were cutting it in half and looking inside of it. And yeah, thanks, Jeff. Just one view is probably adequate. And excuse me. And although it has much of the character of the new train station, it also has its own unique character with the curved top roof. But that's also serving an important function, believe it or not. Obviously keeping rain out, but Route 13 eastbound is literally 30 or 40 feet behind us. And the heavy masonry, as well as the radius roof, is to deflect, absorb, and get rid of sound so we can have at least as privately as possible uninterrupted musical performances and things. There'll always be noise, of course. And it's really almost impossible to drown out the train noise, but even that has some mitigating strategies. There is secondary steel, we call it in my profession, to hold up various stage props, lighting, acoustics, etc. I think there might be. Is there one more slide, Jeff? I should remember that. Is that it? All right. Well, very good. Like I said, that was the quick tour. Obviously, I can go into a lot more detail. Probably not a good night to do that. Okay, thank you. Oh.
Hey, real quick, Thad, maybe just to put it in context, can you just talk about the width, height of the stage?
Sure. It is, excuse me, it is, I want to make sure I got my dimensions correct in my head. It is 44 feet wide, 110 feet long. Excuse me, heavens. Roughly 20 feet inside to the underside of structure, but it's actually taller than that. It's probably closer to a little over 30 feet total height. It will be, I think, an impressive and nice balance to the train station, which now that we're in steel, everybody understands how big the train station is, which is quite exciting, I have to tell you. So that the wings on each side are around, well, let me tell you, from the main doors, and those are telescoping doors that come down, from the stage to the top is right at 28 feet. The stage is 4 feet above grade, too. So even if we have a big crowd, and everybody knows that site over on Washington is pretty long, right behind Veterans Park all the way to Route 13 eastbound. So everyone will have, I think, excellent views, even if you're far back. Anything else? Oh, yeah, Jeff.
Yes, Mr. Doherty.
Thank you for the presentation. I was looking, and given the location, there's no real way to hide this, but the stage right, the access, the loading dock, will be facing Washington Street.
It'll be eastbound, yes.
And they're usually not the most attractive parts of a building, especially over time. I don't know if there's any special treatment that maybe can be designed into this to make it look not necessarily like a loading dock.
Actually, that was discussed. Jeff, would you mind going to the elevations? That should be the next 2 more slides down. So one of the discussions, Councilman, was that is mostly eastbound traffic, so you almost have to look in your mirror to see the Washington Street side. We're almost forced by street geometry to unload on that side, just simple function. And I might mention that my understanding is Washington Street gets shut off during major venues for expansion and unloading and that type of thing. So also recognizing always, and we're all concerned with budget, that we just simply didn't spend as much on the east side since it's the building really doesn't have a backside anyway, but since it's the non-visible main view side, a simple composition, frankly, just to put it bluntly. And I think it'll be attractive. Could we do more? Possibly, if you want to spend more money on the side that's not as obvious. Jeff, would you mind panning up, straight up on that? This is the side you're going to see as you approach the project, just passing the train station, crossing the tracks. This will be immediately on your left. Now, there's a display video on the right, lower right portion. The event plaza, of course, there's a competition going on right now to name it. And the city of Carbondale, that's just me putting in lettering. It won't be necessarily that type of lettering, but it's just communicating that there will be signage and recognition for the main entry side. Now, if you're familiar with the tracks, and I think most of us have walked across the sidewalk over there, the hill drops off. It's intentionally laid out for blanket on the hillside to look into, as well as have opera seating, we call it, some small areas further north of the main stage for side viewing. A caveat is we have our sidewalk musicians that were spread around. Some years ago, we did the celebrity series, Gary, and I plan on getting those out from the maintenance park over on the north side of town and putting those into the project. So we want to bring those back.
Other comments from council on this side? Mr. Los.
Well, I've been and continue to be skeptical about putting a venue right next to the train tracks, but that's a minority position. So everybody else seems to think it's good, and That's fine. So within that, I like the design. I do agree with Mr. Doherty, it'd be useful at least to have a sense of what might be done with that loading dock area and what that might cost. Maybe it's worth doing and maybe it's not. But
okay. We can talk about it.
As you've presented it, I think it looks nice.
Thank you very much. Can I add on the train side, that was a concern. And in fact, this was a couple of years ago, one of the councilmen might have objected to a fairly heavy masonry wall that is also flanking parallel to the tracks, the new multimodal station. I'm mentioning that because, one, our acoustic consultant lowered it in height. It's being bid as an alternate in case we have enough money to do it, but it's serving a really twofold important function, and that is security against the tracks. You'll really have to make it an effort to get over that thing. It is also designed for future fence enclosure of the venue during ticket sales, especially for major acts. Another important aspect of that heavier masonry wall is we can't do really anything about train horn noise. We can hear that all over town. But we can mitigate the screech of wheels on the iron rails that pierce the ears. And I was very pleased our acoustic consultant absolutely endorsed that heavy masonry to bounce that sound back and get it out of the ears and that's the clickety-clack and the real high-pitched screech of steel against steel. So those are mitigating strategies, and we really hope they're in the project.
I appreciate you taking the time to design that in. I thought Founders Park would be a better venue, but nobody else agreed. I was the only one who thought that. So,
there's some real advantages to this location. I really won't fault that decision. Anything else?
Other comments from this side? Comments from this side?
Comment that I had was about the mitigating strategies that you had to muffle out the sound. I know with the new modal system that we're putting in, it's going to be more trains running on the track. So you did address that somewhat.
And in fact, the multimodal itself has a heavy masonry wall on its east side, track side, for also sound mitigation. But everyone, please understand, they're just loud. And, we're hoping to subdue the sound a little bit, but I don't think we're going to beat it completely. It's just not much you can do against something that loud, that big, that close.
Ms. Kilman.
This is tangential, but related. If there's a way we could ever find the money via grant or however to submerge the rail line through town, I would love to go ahead and do that.
Can I speak to that briefly?
Sure.
When I was a kid in college, a wonderful program here at our university, there was a big movement in the city at that time to depress the tracks, if you're not aware. And some of us old-timers in this town will remember this. And in fact, the existing Amtrak station is built to be able to push over that depressed track, FYI. But that is an old concept that was back in the late 60s. Somebody help me out. Early 70s?
All the way up until the Reagan administration. I've got a collection of old planning documents from the city of Carbondale, and I've got that full study.
Yeah.
The whole thing, all the engineering designs, the whole thing. It was Carter administration. This was going to be a trial project because the Carter administration wanted to grade separate all railroad crossings in the United States. So throw this on the very large pile of things that Ronald Reagan ruined, because when he got elected, they cut the funding for that, and we weren't able to do it.
I would like to see that study sometime, Councilman.
Yeah, let me know.
That would be interesting. Yeah. Anything else?
Mr. Doherty.
Well, I worked on that project for 10 years, so I know a little bit about it. And to tell you how old I am, the project building the new depot is one I worked on. I still call it the new depot. It's getting ready to be replaced. So I've been to two groundbreakings for depots in this town. Just the idea of depressing the tracks, which was, we actually have the final design plans completed someplace down in the basement for the rail depression through town.
I did a project in school for a little park near that.
Okay.
Full circle.
Other comments on this side? Okay, any citizens' comments? Great. Oh, yes. Yes, come on, forward.
Am I done, Mayor?
He may have a question for you.
My name is Dan Terry, Carbondale, Illinois. A couple of questions I have for you. On the existing parking lot that's there, how many parking spaces?
Mr. Terry, could you please speak into the
How many
mic?
parking spaces is going to be left?
What was your question?
Out of the existing city parking lot that is there, when this project is finished, how much parking is going to be left?
Okay.
It's Mark Bowman again. This is phase one. It is only the structure that you see on this there. There is no parking stalls taken from that. There is no parking stalls being removed.
When is phase two?
If we ever get money. It's not planned right now.
Speak into the
It's not
mic,
even
please.
designed. Excuse me?
Speak into the mic.
It's not planned right now. It's only planned for phase one. There's no money for phase two yet unless we get any grants.
So to clarify, once the stadium or bandstand is built, then public can still park in that parking lot?
Yes.
Okay, has there been any feasibility study on the effect this stadium being built in that particular spot has on the existing businesses in that neighborhood? No. Has any businesses even been asked this?
No. We did not do a feasibility study.
Well, currently I own Buckwater, and I was encouraged by the city to put the brewery in Buckwater about 4 years ago, right before COVID. And parking is an issue already. And when they have events down there now, my parking lot is completely full. And we pay our bills off of our income on the weekends. And when there's an event, our business drops about 85%. So I was curious on how the city looks at that problem that I have, or will have even more so when this is built.
At this point, we have not done feasibility study or anything to say what the effect on your business would be. If you want to follow up with us on that, we can talk about a possibility.
Okay. And another question I have on the design, the restrooms, how large are they?
They're single user accessible.
Speak into the mic, please.
Thad Heckman again, the architect. They're single user, roughly round numbers, 10 feet by 10 feet, including a shower by request of the musicians, one for gender requirements by the Illinois Plumbing Code, fully accessible.
And that size bathroom or restroom is supposed to handle how many people there watching this show?
My understanding is the city will be bringing in temporary toilet facilities for venues. Okay. The toilets are only for the stage and that immediate building. It's not for the venue.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your input. Yes.
Thank you, Council.
Okay, we'll move on to item 6.2. Mr. Williams.
Item 6.2 is a public hearing on the proposed rental licensing and housing rights ordinances. This is a public hearing portion that allows everyone to provide comment on the proposed ordinances, so we can continue to use that feedback to draft final versions for council's presentation.
I'm sorry. I need to open the public hearing. Is that all I need to say? Okay, so I forgot to make my comment after the presentation we just had. If you were here for that presentation, you can leave the room now. Okay, I know you all are here for this. Okay, so let's do this in an orderly way. I see someone he must have fire under his seat. Come on up. Okay, please state your name.
Greg
and-
Holthouse.
Yes, state your name. And if you have written statement, if you could provide us with that also, that would be great.
Yep, I actually left this statement for everybody.
Wonderful.
And I passed it out earlier. So,
Okay, and please adjust the mic so that we can hear you and those listening in can hear you also.
how's that?
Much
All right.
better.
Greg Holthouse, SI Property Management, located here in Carbondale, Illinois. I've been here for quite some time, and the reason I put this together for y'all is I have some concerns about what is happening as far as the new proposal. Now, I'm a person that likes to keep things super simple. And whenever I look at the problems that you're trying to address, I recognize those problems. But I'd like for the problems to not just be focused on the landlords, but also the tenants as well and their responsibility. But the biggest responsibility that I'd like to point out is that we have people that are in the city of Carbondale right now managing illegally. And I think there's a misunderstanding of license law and who can legally manage property. And I wrote the statute so that you all can take a look at it and see that it states clearly in the License Act that no compensation may be paid to an unlicensed person in exchange for that person performing licensed activities that are there provided in the Act. That includes leasing, selling, even something as simple as showing a property for $20 without a license. First offense is a misdemeanor. Second offense is a felony. And that's really important to know because there's people such as myself that are here today that have spent a lifetime of investment in the city of Carbondale. And to have people that can register today with the city of Carbondale and become the point person, the central point of contact for the city is very troubling to me because if you really look at some of your, as you call, repeat offenders, people that you struggle with as landlords, a lot of those people are unlicensed and doing it illegally. Now, you can legally manage your own property, but my wish here is to provide some insight on things that you can leverage today to help fix your problem. And the first step that I would like to ask the council to consider is that any legislation that you bring forward to make it a prerequisite that whenever you sign that dotted line at the city hall to say, I'm the point of contact for this property, that that person is legally capable to do so. And that's a protection that I feel like anybody who has spent the time, the money, and got the education to provide in a legal manner that we deserve. That's point number one. Now, the other point of concern is that when I look at the act and the things that are being asked, and one of the proposals is that a walkthrough inspection be done with every tenant. I can tell you in August, that's just not possible. And it's 2024, and it's time that not only the landlords, but the tenants as well understand that there's technology there that can move us forward. At my firm, we have an online tenant portal as well as an owner portal. That means that the owner has access to their records and they can get a live preview of their portfolio. And keep in mind, we manage 780 doors. You don't hear from me because I'm not a problem. But I sense problems coming for those of us that are acting in a good light for the city of Carbondale, and to put that regulation on me, to have to show up and walk people through when I'm already giving them online access. We have a 24-hour maintenance line. We never miss a phone call. Everything is then registered into the software. Once it goes into the software, a vendor is dispatched. It's taken me 15 years to build this, meaning our tenants are well taken care of. What I'm asking for you all to do is consider how can you take care of the people that are doing well, enforce existing law, and I want you to also know that I'm here to help to educate and to provide reference points, because this not only exists in property management, it exists in mortgage, it also exists with lease to option to purchase, which I know you all struggle with. There's a right and wrong way to do things. There's a point of reference to what's right currently on the books, and before we reinvent the wheel, can we take a hard look at what we can do to enforce current legislation?
Thank you. You timed that perfectly. Yes. Oh, yes, if you agree. I'm sorry. Please stand if you agree. Just stand, please. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Mayor, councilpersons, city manager, I appreciate your time this evening to address this important subject. Carbondale is unlike any of the other towns in our area. has a college, has extensive student population, and extensive rental properties that have to be managed for the safety and well-being of the public. My name's Jonathan Kibler. I'm an attorney with an office here in Carbondale at the Southern Illinois Law Center. And a significant part of my practice includes representing landlords in regards to their responsibilities in handling evictions for them. As a result, I've got a front row seat to the administration of justice in Jackson County in eviction cases. And my experience over the last 8 years has been that the judges in this county that handle eviction cases pay close attention to and fairly and diligently address the rights of the parties, including the tenants. You have excellent judges here, and it's a credit to the community. As a cog in that system, I have some general and specific thoughts about the suitability of the proposed ordinances. Generally, I think grading could be very helpful to inform citizens of the suitability of accommodations to tighten up compliance by landlords through monitoring and cooperation. But there are already many laws on the books, and you've just heard about some of those. And enforcement of those laws and taking a closer local eye at the enforcement could be the key to obtaining the results that you want without perhaps overburdening the landlords. And I understand landlords may not get a lot of sympathy, but regardless of whether they paint a sympathetic figure to the public, the reality is that their economic circumstances do affect the rental units and the well-being of the community generally. A registration system could enable the city to enforce those laws, as we talked about, but further regulating the content of contracts, creating penalty clauses that operate as automatic forfeitures against landlords will increase the costs of those landlords, including diligent landlords. So many of my clients are sympathetic to tenants' concerns. They try to work with them. They oftentimes let them go several months unpaid. And they also survived the COVID period and had to weather that. By the time they get to an eviction, they've determined the tenant's not going to pay, and they can't rehabilitate them. They're often several months behind. They oftentimes don't seek money judgments against the tenants because there's a tiered system for filing where it's more expensive to seek a money judgment, and they're figuring they probably won't get paid anyways. So they've already lost money, but here we're proposing additional burdens on the landlords. I have some specific concerns. You have things like moving costs, storage of items once they've been abandoned by the tenant, rules of evidence that you're creating. I don't think that'll ever fly in court. Mandatory daily fines for noncompliance of $250 to $750. Charges and fees can't get paid if you don't list them. Well, which ones are supposed to be included in that? Here's a real problem for the tenants, that police reports are admissible in evidence. Again, I don't think you're going to make rules of evidence for the court, but police reports oftentimes contain information gathered at the scene that may or may not be reliable from third persons. You don't want that. The proposed ordinances have some good components, but they need another look. And I'm sorry for showing up late to the discussion. I understand this discussion's been going on for some months already, but I would welcome the opportunity to speak with the city attorney about these and many other specific concerns that I have about the proposed legislation. Thank you.
Can you forward that to the city attorney, please?
I can, and if you'll just give me a day or so to do that.
Yeah, he'll give you a card. And if you agree with those comments, would you stand, please?
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Hello, my name is Victor Ludwig. I live here in Carbondale. I'm a renter. So, to address some things that have been said in previous discussions and in discussions with landlords that I've had, the ones who do it right don't have anything to fear about this. If you're a diligent landlord who follows the law, you have nothing but benefit from this because your unscrupulous competitors will be burdened out of existence. If you're acting unscrupulously, if you're breaking law, if you're breaking ordinance, you have no right to be doing what you do as a landlord. You can't do it. That's the point of this.
There's a right way of doing things, and I think all of the landlords here know that, and some of them do very well by it, from what I've heard from other tenants at other properties, and from people on all sides of this. We understand that there are people who do it right, and we don't want to see them go out of business because this is a college town and people need housing, and that's currently the only way we have to do it. So I feel that the city should step in to add additional mechanisms by which it can enforce and protect measures, to enforce measures that protect all of the tenants here, because the tenants don't have lawyers. The tenants don't have lawyers, and if they do, well, they're pretty lucky tenants, because I couldn't afford one if I tried. If I was to, as I currently am, I'll just go personally here, there's roaches infesting my apartment for 8 months. The whole building is infested. The entire building is infested, and it has been for 8 months. I have to lock all of my food in plastic bins. I can't leave a single thing out for longer than 5 minutes. When I cook, I can't leave the kitchen because I have to watch the pan. I have to watch water boil so that I can live safely and happily and healthily. And now I'm moving out of Carbondale because I can't find a place to live here that's safe. And so this might be the last time I speak to you about this, and it really breaks my heart to have to leave, but that's why. Because I have to buy a house to be secure. I have to buy a house somewhere where it's cheap enough for me to do it, and so I'm moving out of town. I'll be close by. I'll still come and bother you sometime, but I have to do that because I can't find a good landlord because there's not enough of them. There's enough property. It's owned by bad landlords. Get rid of the bad landlords, keep the property, fix the property, help your tenants, give us somewhere to live. It's somewhere to live, and it's somewhere clean and safe to live. How many times would I have to call the city to make that work? How many lawyers would I have to hire to get that through court? How bankrupt do I have to be to actually have a livable house? A diligent landlord won't suffer. The unscrupulous landlords, the ones who break the laws, who hurt their tenants, who refuse to provide adequate housing, they're the ones that we're not going to see in this community anymore, and they don't belong here. That's the one person who doesn't, people who break the law like that, because it's horrible. And I really do hope that we can do something. We can make compromises. We can figure out something to pass this. The fines have to stay. The benefit to tenants who are forced out, because they only get that moving fee if their space is unlivable. And if it's unlivable, the problem's already gone too far, and they deserve the chance to move with dignity as opposed to packing the items that aren't destroyed by water, roaches, fire, all of these things into a few shoe boxes, throwing them in the car and leaving and having to live on the street, having to live out of their car, having to live with family again. That's why that clause is there, and it's important, because everyone in the city deserves to be able to stay here. Thank you.
Thank you. If you agree with that statement. Thank you. Anyone else? In the back. If you don't want to speak and you have something written you want to allow us to read or you want to provide to us, please feel free to. Yes.
I'm Adam Ashby. I am not a tenant, but I'm not a landlord. I'm here tonight to talk about landlords. Okay. Now, before we get started, I want to make one thing abundantly clear. Landlords do not provide value, okay? The workers who built those houses provide value. Some landlords have it very, very confused, okay? Everything that they have talked about tonight, about I have to spend this money, I have to spend that money, they get that from the tenants, okay? Say I buy a house right now, and these are made up numbers, but say I buy a house right now for $100,000, and I rent that house for $2,000 a month. It takes me 50 months to make that $100,000 back. The whole time, however, I don't have to do anything to improve that house, okay? And after that too, I don't have to. I'm not saying that you don't. I'm saying I don't have to. And after that $100,000 is returned to my pocket, I continue to profit off of something that I've added no value to, okay? Even if I say hire some workers to do something, it is the workers who are adding the value to that house. And the money that I'm spending is the money of my tenants, okay, that they work for, okay? If no landlord existed, right, everybody would have a house. The houses, as we've already covered, are already there, okay? Not just landlords, housing laws in general, but the houses are already there. The reason that you see homelessness, the reason you see folks without housing, as we've already went over, is because certain people enjoy hoarding this housing, okay? Certain people being landlords. Now, whenever you have landlords that hoard housing like this, right, and they hold it at a set price that most people cannot afford, that is what drives homelessness. Being a landlord is a privilege. It is not a right, okay? If you are not going to provide people with livable and affordable housing, you do not have the right to be a landlord, okay? It is an economic position. It's a job, okay? And I believe that part of the responsibility of that job is providing safe, adequate, and affordable housing to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. If you agree with those comments, please stand. Thank you all. Anyone else? Yes. Ma'am. Yes.
My name is Loretta Cooley. I was the last meeting. I don't talk in front of people, but I got fired up enough to do it. I was absolutely puzzled at the last meeting when I hear everybody talking about having a problem renting. I've been in the rental business for 50 years. I have a small complex. It's 146 units. It is well maintained. I'm 86 years old. I am in that office every day. My property manager has been there for 22 years. He's 60. We live 20 minutes away. I'm on call 24/7. So is he. If anything happens, I'm there. We treat our tenants like they were family. Some of my best friends have been people that rented from me years ago. I have mothers bringing their kids in because the mothers rented from me. I must be doing something right. We take care of them. We care about them. We're responsible. Our buildings are kept up. We don't ask anything in the city. We don't utilize the fire department, the police department. I can't even get a water meter changed. So I've been trying to get changed for 2 years and put in phone calls that I didn't get returned. We're caring, responsible people. We like our tenants. I even give them a dozen homemade cookies when they come in. When they rent, I have more renters than I have apartments. So I don't understand what the problem is. And if I haven't learned to do it after 50 years, I'm not going to learn now. I think I'm doing fine without any more rules, regulations, or expenses. I pay $282,000 a year in property taxes. Can you imagine that? No. I'd like to get a water meter for it, but I'm not. I guess what I'm saying is I think I'm doing a pretty good job. Leave me alone.
Once again, when you clap, I can't tell how many people are clapping or if you're just clapping loud. If you would stand, please, it really helps us to know who supports that. And thank you, Ms. Loretta, for doing such a great job. I'm sorry, said thank you. Anyone else? Oh, great. Oh, yes, in the back. Is there anyone else who would like to speak while he's coming to the mic? Okay.
Hello, my name is Denton Williams. I am a partner of University Edge Apartments here in Carbondale. I have 2 questions and 2 requests. Should I list them all? Or could I say one and encourage dialogue?
However you would like to do it, yeah.
My first question is, if I know we're in the early stages of writing up this proposal, if I have any questions about the proposal in between meetings, is there a most effective way to get, like, a method of communication to get those questions answered?
If you turn to your left, a card is there for you.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, I was curious if there has been any discussion on what the licensing would be, how much it would cost. Is there any
Not
information regarding that?
No.
Okay. Then my two requests specifically are in reference to 2244 rental agreements under prohibited provisions, specifically Section G. I'm requesting that the section be further specified. The final clause in Section G is ambiguous and circular, in my opinion. That section is requiring tenants to pay monthly rent by either post-dating checks or through, I guess, reoccurring ACH transactions. But my issues with the final clause, any other means that financially obligate the tenant to the cost of the entire lease term. A lease agreement would be a financial obligation to the entire term of the lease. I don't have an issue with barring post-dated checks or ACH. It just seems very open-ended, and any other financial term that obligates someone to the term of the lease, that's a lease agreement in itself. Okay. So wanted to share that request for further specification on that. My second and last request is with regard to 2243, right to pre-lease and end-of-lease inspection, specifically with end-of-lease inspection. In my opinion, I don't see how an end-of-lease inspection is productive. It seems to open a door for kind of an empty argument, because anything that would arise at the end-of-lease inspection, for the most part, would have to be resolved in court. We disclose, and we're required to disclose, all of our charges for cleaning, repair after the lease. End-of-lease inspections kind of encourage tenants not to pay attention to those charges and rely on the post end-of-lease inspection. So in a way, we're kind of, as it is right now, encouraging people to rely on word of mouth rather than the contract itself. So my request is that end-of-lease inspection be omitted just on a contractual basis, as well as just in practice. It would be very difficult. I know that was brought up before, but it would be very difficult for larger landlords to individually do that. So that is all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you agree with that, please stand. Great. Okay, someone in the very back had their hand up. There was someone in the, was that you, sir? Grayson. Oh, gray suit. Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. Rolf Schilling. I'm one of the owners of Schilling Properties with my family. I'm going to be very brief. Last meeting, we were told that we would have a committee comprised of housing owners, probably the SIU Tenant Association, city staff, and legal counsels. We never had that.
That is this meeting.
Well, you can't have that meeting with 5 minutes when you have a tremendous amount of stuff to go over, and I can't ask you questions because you said that's not possible. So how can you have a discussion from one side? That's what you're asking us to do. We can only make a very short presentation that basically means nothing because you don't reply.
No, that was for council comments. There have been questions asked tonight that were responded to.
I know, but you can't, I have about 50 questions here. I can't go over those, but as you agreed at the last meeting, there would be a committee put together to go over this so we can bring this to you with a lot more relevance than what we have right here. Because this is definitely not something that's easily understood. You know, there's so many different items in here that are questionable. I'm not saying it's a bad deal. I'm just saying we've never had an opportunity to really sit down with the city staff to go over this. And that's what you all agreed to at the last meeting, and it was not followed through.
Okay, let me comment on that because we've talked. First, how would you determine who would be the representative on that committee?
They already had a committee set up originally that basically looked at this the first time.
No, I mean the representative from your side. We have city staff that are still here. They're still employed. At that meeting, we did say if you had comments or questions to call city staff directly.
That's not true, ma'am.
We didn't say staff would be available?
You said Mr. Lowe's was one of them. It said, let's get together, sit down with all these folks, have everyone represented, and we can hash this out. That did not happen.
You're right, that did not happen. That's why we're here tonight. But we can't change what happened in the past. No problem. If you want to get together with city staff, they are always available. Always.
But you need a representation of students, renters, legal people.
I understand.
The staff, but we don't have that here, that you cannot have a conversation that needs to be had when you have something this important. Keep in mind, you have at least 60% of residential properties in the city of Carbondale, and you are trying to do something here that's going to affect the majority of the residential properties.
Exactly.
You're not giving us an opportunity to sit down and hash some of this out. You can't do it in a council meeting.
Okay, so we have had representation from students tonight. Multiple students have spoken. But again, if we said we would have that meeting and you all want that meeting called, we are more than happy to accommodate. No problem.
I thought we were doing that. I mean, can I ask?
Wait, I just said no. Once again, please don't yell out like that. It's disrespectful. If you have a comment, please come to the mic. I just said we can have the meeting. No problem.
Okay.
Our legal counsel will set up the meeting along with city manager. No problem.
Well, can I ask a question, Mayor?
Sure.
Mr. Lowe's, am I wrong in what I said?
No, and I've been sitting here just jiggling in my seat wanting to respond, even though I'm not supposed to. So, but let me clarify. What you're referencing is something that I said and that I believed then and still believe now, but I'm one of 7. I'm the boss of no one but myself. I don't get to control what staff does. It takes 4 to give that direction. So I still think that should happen. Some years back, I was involved in the drafting of an ordinance for the neighborhood business district. There are folks in the room who were there for that. That's exactly how it happened. And it worked out. And at the end of that process, nobody was entirely happy with the result, but everyone felt like they could live with it. And I'm not aware of it causing a single problem in the 10 or so years since that was done. So, we're trying to accomplish something really complicated here, and it would help to have more people putting their heads to work to do it rather than fewer. But once again, I'm not the boss of anybody but me. So I'd be happy to meet with you. I've responded to the folks that have emailed me so far.
Okay.
Well, that's all I have.
Okay. Would you please, even possibly before that meeting, since you have a list of 50 questions, which is a lot, if you could get those to either city manager or city attorney so that they can have answers or rationale before that meeting. That way, possibly something can get accomplished at that meeting.
Sure. If we can have this meeting, I mean, I think we're owed this meeting. For the
think
way
what?
you're going to impact us, I think the rental property owners are due a meeting to go over all of this. But thank you.
Yeah, we will have the meeting. Yeah, and once again, if you could get those questions to either legal counsel or Mr. Williams. Thank you so much. Okay. Yes, sir.
My name is Steve Horton. I live in Carbondale.
Oh, I'm sorry. Would you stand if you agree with Mr. Schilling?
Not often I get up and people start clapping.
Okay.
Some things are probably understood, but things that should be emphasized is that there are lots of different kinds of landlords. In Carbondale, I'm a small landlord. There's someone here, I think they had, 600 doors. I'm not sure if that was correct.
680.
Tremendous amount.
780.
They're just an entirely different world. Each of those groups is different. And I hope you understand that. I'm sure you do. As far as meetings go, it's a consistent problem here in Carbondale that there's not transparency with the government and the citizens of the town. That's just a fact. And we never do able to get through to the city manager in a way that makes any sense, at least to me. Perhaps other people can. But I was told at one point by a council member that there was going to be a committee, just like Mr. Schilling talked about, and that perhaps we would be invited to be on that committee. We have ideas. We have thoughts about what you do as a small landlord as opposed to what he may be thinking about as large landlords and the different kinds of problems involved. But, Ms. Mayor, I have to tell you the truth. It's very difficult to deal with your city. Very difficult, all the time, in every kind of way. And we're turned around, we're ignored. People say they don't get phone calls returned. It's a problem with the city government and the way it's being run. Thank you.
Thank you. If you agree with that, please stand. Okay, let me just comment on that. If you have problems getting through to city staff, I think everybody in this room probably has my phone number. And if you don't, let me give it to you now. We ready? 618-303-1973. It is listed on the city's website. There is a phone number also for the office. Please, all of us are accessible to you. Please give me a call. Now, that's not to say I'm going to solve your problem, but at least I know what it is. I know what your concern is, and that's one of my major things is I want to hear from you. I'm here to serve you. So if you can't get whoever you're trying to call me. If you're not already in my phone, send me a text first to say, hey, I'm going to call you, and I'm calling, because otherwise I'm not going to answer your call because, I don't do that. My car does not need new insurance or whatever they say to you when they call you. Okay. Anyone else wanting to speak? Yes, sir. And I see a hand in the back. When the timer gets to about 3 minutes, if you could start approaching the mic, please.
Mine will be very short.
Give us your name, please.
Barry Spain, 107 Crabapple Lane. Although my situation was different because I had a landlord in a manufactured home park, and I have a very nice manufactured home. The reason I no longer live in Carbondale is because I didn't get any help from the city. In that situation, went on years and years and years, and finally I said, fine, I'll move. I'm much happier where I'm at.
If you agree with that, please stand. Thank you all for giving me the cue. Okay. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Ron Diedrich, Local Government Affairs Director with Illinois Realtors. A lot of the reason why there's not been any additional commentary from, I believe, both parties is that over the last 2 months, there's not been any additional dialogue, which goes back to we were hoping to see, at least from our side, if there was additional commentary, thoughts that were added from the two council persons, Los and Kilman, who said they were going to meet with city staff over the holidays and conversely after the holidays to have more input on that. So so going back to the importance of having some maybe smaller stakeholder meetings. I will say that for sure on this topic, our interactions have been positive with the city attorney and city manager in terms of going back and forth, but until we see the additional council input as to what their thoughts are, this is a moving target and it would be too early to hone in on that. I do want to bring additional light to the Safe Housing Addenda in 22-4-4B. These issues, as they are Safe Housing Addenda, as it's spelled out in the current Human Rights chapter, more commonly referred to as crime-free housing provisions across the state and nation. These are increasingly under scrutiny. In fact, in 2023, California passed a ban on such language that is written in your Human Rights chapter. As a result, there are a number of organizations, and there is legislation that's currently been filed with the House, 5314, which would seek a ban on crime-free housing in the state of Illinois and other forms of that. It also deals with occupancy and other actions that are involved with law enforcement and municipality regulations on these relations between a housing provider and a tenant. So with all due respect, I believe a good start to trying to hone in on this would be immediately pulling the Safe Housing Addenda. Thank you.
Okay. Could you send that also to city attorney or city manager? Do you still want to say something? Do you still want to say something? Mr. Snyder, could you explain how we got to this point?
Thank you, Mayor. Jamie Snyder, Carbondale City Attorney. Mr. Williams, myself, and several staff members got together trying to figure out who should be included in the stakeholders. Who you bring in makes a difference. And if we excluded somebody, they would feel like they weren't able to give their voice. We thought having a public hearing before we get into a tighter realm would be more important so that everybody could have their public voice heard. This is as open of a meeting as you can get. It is televised, it is live streamed, and everybody has an opportunity. While we restrict the time limit to 4 minutes, the council does have the ability to extend that. They also have the ability to extend the 30-minute per agenda item. And we felt that this made for a better impact for everybody to be able to do so. Several landlords and several people have reached out to myself and Mr. Williams with concerns. We are putting together a list of those concerns and planning on putting together not really a FAQ, but kind of a answer to every one of those questions and concerns that have been brought. So far, several of the concerns that have been brought are issues that are already in our current code, just in a different location. So there's a good starting part for the communication, is trying to figure out exactly what is in our code and what is going to be new and how to address those issues. And I think this gives us the very good chance by having this public forum, as far as people having concerns about reaching our offices, reaching Mr. Williams. I've not experienced that. I have got very few phone calls from individuals. The ones who have called me, I've called back. I've spoke for several hours. I've met with several people in person to address some of these issues. And it's amazing when you sit down and talk with somebody and explain your thoughts and rationales. When you wrote something, they understand it in a different way. Legal writing isn't always the most clear writing, and my goal when this is finalized is to have something that is a collaborative effort that is clear and concise, and that everybody, like Mr. Lowe said earlier, may not be happy with, but can live with. And that's what we're trying to do in this situation. It's a struggle, and we understand that this is going to take time to do so.
Thank
Could you speak specifically to the crime-free housing, that addenda, and where that is in our code right now?
We currently have that section in Title IV of our code. It was brought before this council 2 or 3 years ago, based on some comments that the Realtors Association had. One of the provisions in that has been changed, and I will look at the bill that was brought up tonight to see where that's at. Granted, that is not law as of yet, but I do agree that there might be some issues based upon some other statutory issue or civil suits that have been filed throughout the country but have not been addressed in Illinois yet.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Yes. Okay, we're going. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Okay, great.
My name is Denton Williams. I'm a partner of University Edge Apartments in Carbondale. Just have an additional comment. Thank you for letting me speak once again. I appreciate you establishing methods of communication. Communication hasn't been great on this issue. I understand everyone's busy. I'm busy too. I did reach out to Mr. Snyder's office about a month ago, early on after the first meeting, once we got the housing rights proposal. And I asked the same question that I asked the first time when I spoke tonight, which is just, how do I get my questions answered? And he referred, I didn't talk to Mr. Snyder directly. I was referred to Neighborhood and Building Services. And my plate just got full. I didn't actually reach out to Mr. Lenzini's office. I just didn't really want to go through the bounce around. I just had a feeling that if I reached out, I'd be referred back to the city attorney's office because it seemed like an issue they were going to be most effective at handling. So my only comment is communication hasn't been great, but I really appreciate you giving up your phone number, even though that was already public knowledge. But saying that, giving one last resource if all else fails, Mr. Williams, Mr. Snyder. And one last comment, I'm a partner of a housing firm in Carbondale. Regardless of what was said about the safe housing addendum, I was pleased to see it when it got passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to declare this public hearing as closed. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Mr. Lowe's has a brief comment.
It's not even a comment, it's a request that we explain that council doesn't really talk back at a public hearing, but that we've got an item later on the agenda where we'll comment.
Is that it?
I guess I've just explained it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, now we can declare this public hearing is closed. And again, if you came for this issue and you would like to leave now, and I think council, do we need to take a break? Like 5 minutes? 5 minutes. So, well, let's do 7. We'll reconvene at 8:25. 8:25.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Could I suggest that if people came for this issue only, they may want to stick around for the discussion on general business agenda?
Oh, yes, I forgot. If you came and want to hear the general business of council, please stay. And we're going to move on to item 8.2, which is discussion with stakeholders on the rental agent licensing, rental fee leasing, and housing rights. Can you read that since Gary's not here? Sure. Yeah. Okay, we're going to call the meeting back to order. It's 8:27, and we're going to get started again. So item 8.2, please, Ms. Sorrell.
On July 25th, 2023, City staff presented information to the City Council regarding comparisons between the current residential rental registration program and residential rental licensing programs that have been adopted by other Illinois municipalities. Following discussion, staff was directed to establish a focus group consisting of landlords and SIU Student Legal Services. Staff also contacted Land of Lincoln legal aid, and Illinois Realtors to assist staff in preparing draft ordinances to possibly convert the city's current rental registration program to a licensing program. At the December 12, 2023 City Council meeting, the Council heard from several members of the public concerning the proposed ordinance that would directly affect the landlords and tenants. It was recommended that some changes be made, and certain Council members wanted to make specific changes after discussion with staff. Before the December 12th meeting, City staff met with Andy Wallace based on comments that he provided and provided him with responses in person at the City Attorney's office. Some changes were made to clarify issues that he had, as well as providing further explanation to Mr. Wallace that provided him with a better context of the proposed language. The City also received a response from Jason Grendon, a staff attorney with Land of Lincoln Legal Aid, concerning the provisions of the ordinance. Staff reviewed his suggestions and incorporated some of those changes. City Attorney also discussed the language that was being proposed with Scott Hendricks, who represents home rentals, as well as from Ron Diedrich of Illinois Realtors. The drafted ordinances and information on tonight's public hearing were shared with the public and registered landlords on January 19th via a link on the City website and through social media posts. There have been no new comments or suggestions from the public. Staff requests that the City Council discuss the attachments and provide further direction to staff regarding possible future adoption of the ordinances. The two notable changes that staff would like to draw the Council's attention to are the following. Section 22412A5, in the event that the City of Carbondale inspectors or any government agency prohibit occupancy to the premises due to the landlord's noncompliance with the Carbondale Revised Code, the tenant shall be permitted to immediately terminate the lease and shall be compensated the sum of 2 months' rent to assist with the tenant relocation, and the landlord shall return the entire security deposit to tenant. All forfeited rents and deposits shall be returned to the tenant within 30 days from the date the premises was determined to be unoccupiable. Section 417.6a, reasons for revocation. A license issued hereunder may be revoked by the City Council following a hearing on the record if the holder of the license meets any of the following. And it seems to drop off there.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Harrell. Okay, comments from council. Mr. Lose.
Okay. Contrary to my normal practice of speaking extemporaneously, I actually prepared remarks. But even then, there's too many, and we've been here too long. So I'm gonna edit as I go, as best I can. So, one thing to start with: there's really three separate issues here. One is a landlord and tenant ordinance, which staff. Their draft is entitled a Housing Rights Ordinance. I'm going to keep calling it Landlord and Tenant Ordinance, so when you hear that, I'm talking about the so-called Housing Rights Ordinance. All right. The other two are licensing regimes. One would convert the existing registration and inspection regime to a licensing and inspection regime. The other would begin to license landlords / rental leasing agents. And so, three separate things. I think the second two, both licensing ordinances, are far, far from ready to pass or vote on. In part for reasons that people have brought up tonight. Again, I speak for myself. I don't speak for the council. I don't speak for staff. I'm not the boss of anybody else. But I think that a more substantive process of engagement with both landlords and tenants would be useful. I think it would be useful on the substance in that I think we would get better ordinances out of it. I also think it would be more useful politically in that people are more likely to accept something that they feel like they've had a voice in creating. So that is important to me, but I am not the boss of whether that happens. The landlord and tenant ordinance. I think that the draft that was circulated is also very far from being ready to pass. But I have made very extensive proposed revisions to that ordinance that I think brings it a lot closer to being ready for a vote. It's not completely ready, I don't think, but it is closer. Unfortunately, none of you have seen that. It was and is my opinion that that this public hearing that we had just now was premature. I thought it would be a waste of everyone's time because we would be taking comment on ordinances that are in an embryonic form, and that it should be that part should be held back until we've got something that's much closer to being done, by which point everyone ideally would have had a lot of an opportunity to weigh in and help shape the ordinance. But I voiced that opinion. That was not done. Again, it's not my call. All I can do is say what I think ought to happen, and either people will do it that way or they don't. So I'll provide comments as best I can. I'll try to give you some feedback on what folks were said. I did think that the draft we'll start with the landlord and tenant ordinance. I thought staff's draft was a good first start. I appreciated it. Mr. Snyder and I have talked at length about it, hours of time, and I would hesitate to guess how many hours I've got in it. 100, 120, a lot. And I will tell you that I have not employed full-time by the city, and I'm not a member of the Carbondale Free Time Society. I have a full-time job, got a kid, got a lot going on. Any time that I put into this has to be taken from something else. But I'll do it because I think it's important, and I have done it. I've sent that draft to council, city manager, city attorney, and people who emailed me prior to this. So there's a few copies of it floating around. If you'd like a copy, there are agendas out there, I think, on the seats. So if somebody wants to start one of those circulating, give me your name and your email address. Please write it legibly, and I will send you a copy, because I don't get to decide what goes up on the website or what gets emailed out. I can do that myself, but you got to let me know who you are. Okay. So in terms of what I'm proposing, I'll give you as best I can because you don't have a draft you can look at yet. So here's what I'm proposing as far as the major departures from what staff drafted. One is the name. This is a landlord and tenant ordinance. I reviewed multiple ordinances around the state and also state statute. All of them everywhere are called landlord and tenant ordinances. There are none that are called housing rights ordinances, and we don't need to further confuse the issue with an idiosyncratic name. We should just stick with the standard that is done across the state. That, to me, is important. And it's the best description of what the ordinance would do. It defines rights, yes it does, but it also defines obligations and remedies, both for landlords and for tenants. Landlords have certain rights too. Tenants have rights, and those need to be spelled out and made very clear so everybody understands. So it's not just an ordinance that creates or defines rights. Another change is the location of it, and this is not a change that has legal significance. Staff has proposed putting it in Title 22, which is the human rights title. It's a brand new title. I'm proposing that we not do that, and that instead we create a new title. It'd be 4.1. And the reason that I think that should be done is for visibility more than anything, so that you get all of the rental housing regulation in one title, in one spot that's at the top level of the table of contents, so that if you don't know anything about this and you go to the city's code book, over on the left there where it's got the table of contents, you will very quickly see this, and you'll be able to find it, and you'll be able to work your way through it. What I'm proposing would be clear and comprehensive, well organized, and it would thoroughly regulate the landlord-tenant relationship. My goal here, as I've mentioned before, and I'm sincere in that. I don't know if you know that, but I am sincere in that. There are people here who know me. Ask them. I'm a straight shooter. My goal would be that if you're doing the right thing because it's the right thing, you wouldn't even really be affected. What the goal would be is to stop those people who will not behave the way that some of you I know do behave. And as I've said before, I think that when we let people get by with unscrupulous behavior, that operates essentially as an unintended subsidy to them. And so we need to stop subsidizing that. If you want more of something, you subsidize it, okay? And we want less of that, not more. So we should not be subsidizing it. I do consider the draft that I sent around, that I circulated, and that I'll circulate to any of you who want it, a second draft. I have no doubt that a third draft at least will be necessary. I'm absolutely open to feedback. I'm sure there are things I've forgotten. I'm sure there's things that are in there that probably don't need to be. You would know that better than me, and I'm speaking both to landlords and to tenants. So let me know. With respect to the two licensing ordinances, I don't think they're even close to being ready to come to a vote. And I'll explain the reasons why. So the first one, the one that would convert the existing inspection and registration program to a licensing program. That one's closer. I do think that one's closer. I'm not fully persuaded that we should do that. When I first saw it, I was opposed to it. After, as I said, hours of conversation with the city manager as far as what his goal was in taking that approach, I can see the point, and he might be right. I'm not sure. I'm still thinking that through. And I think everybody should, because it's a major change. You know, it would be a huge reform. So I don't know. But let's say he is right. Let's say that after thinking it through, that's where we land, is that that's the right way to go. There's a lot of ambiguity left in there that needs to be pinned down. We need something that's very clear. I don't want a situation where somebody has their license in jeopardy that would license individual units, where their license is in jeopardy for an individual unit because it wasn't clear what was required of them. It needs to be very clear. There needs to be no doubt as to how that would operate. So that's that one. With respect to the other one, the ordinance that would license landlords as a whole, I'm going to explain again what I'm trying to achieve here and how I think we ought to achieve it, and I'll address some of those criticisms. I'm going to try to do it quickly without getting too bogged down. So a problem that we've had in Carbondale, a big problem, is that there are a handful of unscrupulous landlords, and those people have built a business model based on flouting the law, abusing their tenants, neglecting their properties. We've all heard the stories. We heard some at the last meeting from some tenants, but we've heard them all our lives if we've been around Carbondale. We know what we're talking about here. And I want to emphasize, this is absolutely not all landlords. There was several people who spoke tonight who I know for sure are not those landlords. And then there are some that I have to speculate must not be because I've not heard of them. I don't know their names. Some of them own a lot of property, and I've not heard of them. So that tells me that they're not the abusive people that licensing would be targeted at, because I have heard their names. I've rented from some of them. And so it's not everybody, but there are people who do that. And so they've built the fact that they're occasionally going to have to pay some fines into their business model. They know that most of the time they're going to get away with abusing their tenants and flouting the law. There's only so much time that staff has to enforce this stuff. Some tenants don't know what their rights are and will never report it to staff. So they know that they're going to be able to get away with it a lot. And they've priced in the fact that they're going to have to pay some fines once in a while. And they just continue to operate that way. So the point of licensing would be to put a stop to that by creating the ability to revoke an unscrupulous landlord's license, and by doing that, shut down the business entirely. My hope would be that it's never necessary to do that. Maybe I'm naive, but I hope that would be the case. My hope would be that those unscrupulous landlords would recognize, okay, the game is over. This business model is no longer going to work. We're going to have to revise it, and we're going to have to operate in an acceptable way, or we don't want to do that and we're going to get out of business. Either was acceptable to me. But like so many things, that's not up to me. I don't get to decide what those folks do. And if that doesn't happen, then licenses can be revoked as needed. And either way, the abuse would stop. So here's how I think we should accomplish it. What we need to do, as I've said before, is we treat this licensing regime the same way we treat a liquor license regime. So remember when we had that bar owner over on Grand Avenue? I'm not going to name him, but he was a nonstop nuisance. Remember how he used to blast music so loud that you could hear it, not just all around town, but out of town too. And remember how that person repeatedly flouted the liquor code and repeatedly ignored lawful orders of the mayor to cease operation during the shutdown and refused to follow orders that would suspend their license. And you remember how we don't have that problem anymore? That's because we revoked his license. and he doesn't operate a liquor establishment in Carbondale anymore. He's gone. Now, that business is still open under new ownership, but he's gone, and he's not coming back. And so it's really not that complicated. License revocation is an extreme remedy, absolutely. In the context of the liquor code, it's rare. I would hope it would be rare in the context of landlord licensing as well. In the almost 9 years I've been on the council/liquor commission, we've revoked exactly one license. During the time that I lived here, which would have been 15 years prior to getting on the council, I never saw one revoked. I'm sure it's happened before, but not during my time here, not in this century, other than that one time. So normally what happens when you have violations of the liquor code is that there are other sanctions. Those can be as small as a letter of rebuke to the owner. They can involve fines. They can involve a temporary suspension. Now, obviously, that's not going to work with a landlord license, because what are you going to do with the tenant? If the license is suspended for a week, that's not practical. But the analogy is still useful. So, what would need to be done to get the ordinances ready to vote on? I mean, like I said, we need to think through this issue of converting the existing registration and inspection regime to a licensing regime. I'd like to hear from you on that. I'd like to hear from landlords. I'd like to hear from tenants. I'd like to hear from the public, who's neither. There are arguments on both sides. With respect to the landlord and rental agent licensing, I just can't get into it. It's 8:45 and we haven't even done any business yet. We haven't done anything other than talk and listen. So it's just too much. Let me put it this way. We would need to go, we just need to start almost from scratch there. Not entirely. I do appreciate staff's draft. But that needs substantial revisions. So last thing, and then I'll shut up. I'd like to address some of the criticisms, doubts, objections to this kind of approach. So the first is that the city doesn't have the authority to do it. That's false. That's categorically false. Okay, home rule authority is the most far-reaching in all of the 50 states, and I know that because I've researched it. Illinois has no implied preemption, which many states have. If the legislature of Illinois wants to limit home rule authority, it has to use certain magic words, and it has to use a certain magic procedure. And if it fails to do either of those things, if it does those things incompletely, the limitation is not valid. Okay, so home rule units in Illinois have the power of the sovereign, and when I say sovereign, you need to think monarch. Okay, in the United States Constitution is a grant of power, and so at least theoretically, if the Constitution doesn't give the federal government power, it doesn't have that power, right? It starts with no power and then has to be granted power. Now, it does operate as a limitation on state power, and that becomes relevant. But state constitutions are the exact opposite. State constitutions are a limitation on power. And so the state government and the state legislature starts off with all the power of the king, right? And we pass constitutions to limit that power because we don't want government to have that much power, okay? But the remaining power, the plenary power of the legislature, that's the power of a home rule unit, with the exception of places where the United States Constitution limits it, where the Illinois Constitution limits it, or where the legislature of the state of Illinois has specifically and properly limited it. Now, to my knowledge, there is no limit on the ability of a home rule unit to license landlords. If that's there, somebody should tell me, because I've not found it. I don't know that it's there. And so for the argument that the city lacks the authority to do this, to be credible at all, someone would need to make a credible case that the legislature of the state of Illinois could not do this if it wanted to do so. And that's just not credible. If you want to do hair in the state of Illinois for money, you've got to have a license. You want to do nails for money, you got to have a license. So you're telling me that the state couldn't license landlords? I think it could. And so unless somebody can show me I'm wrong, I don't believe that. The city has the authority to do that. Another objection that I've heard is that revoking a license would be an unconstitutional taking. Well, I mean, basically the claim is that the Fifth Amendment's taking clause would prohibit revoking a landlord's license. Well, if that's the case, tell me why it didn't prohibit the taking of a license from that liquor operator. How is it different? Maybe it is. I don't see it. If somebody can explain it, I'd be happy to listen. But I don't think that it is. And the other one, and really the most credible one, is that a licensing regime would be too hard to implement and enforce. That is entirely possible, and I'm open to the possibility that that may be true. However, look, it's a brand new approach. As far as I'm aware, no municipality in Illinois is doing what at least I'm proposing we do. And so it's a brand new thing, and that is not easy. But it's too hard isn't a good reason to not do something, unless it is so hard that it's essentially impossible, or so close to impossible that it's impractical. Or if it's a bad idea. It could be a bad idea. I'm open to that possibility too. Somebody explain it to me. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. I think it's a good idea. But sometimes I'm wrong about things, believe it or not. And I'm open to persuasion on that. So, just to respond in more depth to Mr. Schilling, I do think that is an appropriate way to proceed. And the issue of how do you decide who gets in? Well, there's different ways to resolve that. One is that you could have the same meeting with different participants. Another is that local landlords could sort of caucus together and elect 2-3 people to represent. Choose a lawyer or two. Maybe you get a couple of big landlords and a couple of small ones. Same thing with tenants. That's the kind of problem that can be overcome, and it should be. So again, I don't control it. I'm not the boss of it, but that's what I think should be done and what I'd like to be done. So, final thing, going all the way back to the landlord and tenant ordinance and the lengthy revision that I've proposed. I think that's how we should proceed. I'm not saying that everything in there needs to stay. I'm not saying there aren't things that should be added. Almost certainly both are true. But that's the draft we need to work off of. That needs to be considered draft 2, and we go from there to get draft 3. That's my opinion. It takes 4 people to decide that that's what we need to do, so it would be helpful, I think, if council could opine. Those of you who've seen it, I know it landed in some of your junk mails, and I'm sorry about that. But if you've seen it, if you would opine on how we ought to proceed, I think that would be useful.
Thank you, Mr. Lose. Any council comment? Mr. Doherty.
Thank you. First of all, in terms of the proposal from Councilman Lose, I received it this afternoon. I've skimmed it, but I haven't been able to read it thoroughly. So I can't give an opinion on that at this time. But I think what it illustrates is that we're a long way from having anything to vote on. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I've always believed that Carbondale is a community of process. That there are certain things you have to do. You have to go through the process. And meeting with the stakeholders, getting input from the stakeholders is part of that, and that will be done. Now we have another proposal from Councilman Lose to consider, along with what is on the table previously and tonight from staff. So there's a lot to work through. And there's probably what Councilman Lose has presented will generate 50 more questions. So I think the end result will be good. As Councilman Lose said, it's really to address those bad actors, because we have a lot of good people in the community who are in the business of renting property, and they live here, they invest here, they care about the community, and they take care of their property. But we also have bad actors that why else do we generate a lot of laws? It's to address those who aren't good. And so we need something to help address that. In the 1990s, we proposed to the city council at the time I was city manager, we proposed licensing. We ended up with voluntary inspection. It was interesting, those who volunteered to have their properties inspected used that as public relations. They put signs out, city inspected and approved. And the same thing would, possibly happen on the licensing. 10 years later, we were able to get mandatory inspections, which is what we have now. Implementation of a program like that, of licensing, it will be challenging, because implementing mandatory inspections and trying to inspect all housing units in Carbondale every 3 years was a real challenge. It takes a lot of effort to do that. Today we're talking about, the licensing, and it may come more in the form of landlord-tenant ordinance in terms of addressing issues that need to be addressed in the community. And some of our rental properties that really are not fit to live in, and those need to be addressed. So we're in a process, and I think the end result will be good. It will be good for the landlords, it will be good for the tenants, and it will be good, most of all, for the community. So the process is continuing.
Thank you. Ms. Maxwell.
And I'm going to be brief, real brief. But we received an email from some people in the community, and I felt like that there wasn't an even representation of tenants at this meeting. It was more landlords. And I think that it needs to be equal on both sides, or close to equal, to see what the tenants actually feel. The points in this email was saying that some tenants may not feel comfortable coming to complain about their landlord. They may fear that they may lose their apartment or housing because they came and talked about things that were bad. So I feel like some kind of other way should be proposed so that the tenants' voices can be heard without putting them at risk of something like that happening. And I also like to say that I do like the two notable changes that the staff made about covering the tenant if something happened to the landlord's property and it was revoked, that there will be a way to cover them when they have to move to another place. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maxwell. Any comments on this side? Ms. Rice-Sanders, push your hand up. Oh, Ms. Kilman.
So it dawned on me when this public hearing was announced that we've created for ourselves a bit of a chicken and egg problem. And as Councilperson Lowe said, I didn't necessarily call the public hearing, and I don't structure the way in which we receive citizen input, but the chicken and egg problem is something that Mr. Diedrich referenced. It's that which comes first, a proposed draft or citizen input. And hopefully that process is extensive and collaborative in the sense that we're producing as much out of the engagement with citizens as possible. We're trying to generate the maximum amount of ideas, pull from your expertise and resources, your experiences, and collaborate on something that works or that everyone can live with, right? Ideally, that works and everyone can live with. I did have an opportunity to review, not as in-depth as I would like, Mr. Lose's proposed revisions. They are concise and easily accessible. They are worded in a way that is much easier to understand than what we've currently got before you. And again, it's very tough to hit a moving target when you all are showing up to something and speaking about something that may not be ultimately what we're thinking about as far as a direction is concerned. And so I understand that it's very difficult to see the way in which your bills are paid discussed by us up here in the manner that we are discussing it. And I understand that the prospect of being more burdened than everyone already is in our society right now is a little scary. But I hope that moving through these successive conversations, that there's a lot more collaboration between council, between staff, between everyone who has a vested interest in the outcome of this ordinance. And again, I appreciate everyone sticking with us this late in the evening.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman. Any other comments from this side?
Yes,
Ms. Rice-Sanders.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to say that we're putting together a proposal that will work for everyone. And I just believe when there are rights, there are responsibilities. Our landlords have to be more accountable. Our tenants have to be more reliable. Our city that does inspection has to be on point and be more persistent about what we do, because collectively together, I believe that we can make something work. And I did read the proposal that Adam had sent, Councilman Lose, and I thought most of his points were very good, clear and concise, and something that I believe that we can work with to make this tenant and landlord relationship work in Carbondale. I have been in Carbondale for a long time, and I know and I see people that live in dilapidated homes, and I know about landlords who do not repair their plumbing, and there's problems with electricity. And we just have to realize that some of our problems that are in the streets are because there are no safe homes, and the homes are substandard. And when people live in substandard homes and they come out into the world, the environment, they have problems. They want to fight. They want, things are not right. When home is right, everything is right. So we're just trying to make everything right. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Rice-Sanders. Okay, we will. Yes, Mr. Doherty.
Yeah, I just had another comment that I wanted to make, and it was when you work in city government, or any government for that matter, and you're enforcing, you're in the enforcement business. We often hear, just enforce the existing laws. You don't need any new laws. Well, we heard that tonight. But the only example that was given about enforcing existing laws that I'm aware of was what was presented, the Illinois License Act, in terms of agents having to be licensed. But there was this general comment made more than once that just enforce the existing laws. What I would be interested in is if someone who believes that, give us some examples of what laws we should enforce to make it that we wouldn't need a new ordinance. Because at this point, is rather vague to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Any citizens' comments? Yes, Mr. Monty.
Don Monty. This issue of licensing and the housing regulations has gone on for a long time. But something that struck me tonight in listening to this took me back to my early days working for the city of Carbondale, where my first paid job for the city was as a staff person for a large citizen participation project. Involved meeting with lots and lots and lots of citizens week after week, night after night. And then after that, the Model Cities program and the Community Development Block Grant program, which all had federal statutory requirements for citizen involvement. Which gives me a sense just going the route of having a discussion at a council meeting or a public hearing doesn't necessarily get you to where you want to be. I know it burns up a lot of staff time because I had my time burned. But it's necessary to sit down in informal situations or even some more organized situations, one-on-one or with groups of people, and sit down and talk about what are the problems from your perspective. What do you think needs to be done to solve this problem? And then having gained that information, try to put something on paper to address it, and then go back and sit down with those people again. And so, okay, this is what you've got on paper to try to address your issue. Are we going there? Did we miss something? And only after you've put in this time doing that kind of work, and it's not the work that just gets done during the day, it gets done in the evening, meeting with people, that you can finally come up with something, as I think I've heard alluded to here tonight, not everybody be happy with, but most people are willing to live with. I think I've shared with you individually my frustrations at times over the 4-minute time limit. That probably works pretty well for a very simple cut and dried issue. You know, shall we raise water rates or not? Should this piece of property rezoned or not? But when you have got a very difficult thing in front of you that has 20, 30 pages worth of technical stuff, and somebody wants to address multiple items in there, you can't do it in 4 minutes. There has to be some kind of mechanism. And just saying, well, send it in writing doesn't get the job done either. Where is the feedback? Who's going to take the time to answer every one of those concerns you expressed in the 20 pages you sent them or whatever? I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's better on the front end to take the time, as much time as necessary, but not too much time, to work with people, try to get the ideas formulated to the point where when you come to the city council, it doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out event. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Monty. Any other citizens' comments? Yes.
Hi, Denton Williams, University Edge Apartments. I really just wanted to give Councilman, is it Los, my information. I'd love to see the revised ordinance, I suppose. One last comment from me. To tenants that may still be here, I know a lot of them kind of thinned out. If you are concerned about a retaliatory eviction, please know that if you speak your grievances and you are evicted because you spoke those grievances, you are protected by an Illinois state statute barring retaliatory eviction. Again, Denton Williams. I am a partner of a housing firm. I think tenants should be bolstered, and we should foster communication with them, and that they should not fear retaliatory eviction because that is unlawful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, Victor.
My name is Victor Ludwig. I have a brief question, and this can be resolved later if need be, but how do we plan to constitute this? There's no single organization here that represents the interests of tenants. There are realtor associations that represent that side of things, but a lack of a constituted body for really any group involved. And I'd like it to be official in some way. So if we could have at the next meeting some decision item to constitute a body I would feel that to be most apt, and I'd be curious to hear from any of you on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? For those tenants who may feel they may be retaliated against, you can always email or call or just send handwritten U.S. mail comments to us. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, any other council comments? Okay, let's get back on agenda and we'll go back up to consent agenda. Mr. Williams.
Item 7.1 is regular city council meeting minutes from January 23rd. Item 7.2 is approval warrant for period ending 1/19/24 in the amount of $2,625,351.74. Item 7.3, approval of a warrant for period ending 2/2/24 in the amount of $1,420,686,013.13. Item 7.4, reappointments to boards and commissions. That appointment is for the Planning Commission, Sandy Latecki, to a term ending January 31st, 2028. Item 7.5 is to accept permanent easements for Stormwater Replacement Project CIP 9902. Item 7.6 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to submit an application for U.S. Department of Transportation's Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity Grant Program. Item 7.7 is to award a contract to Hutchison Engineering in the amount of $49,526 for Phase 3 engineering construction inspection services for the East College Street Box Culvert Replacement Project. And item 7.8 is to award the purchase of 3 police vehicles from Vogler Ford of Carbondale in the amount of $146,335 and to approve an ordinance authorizing the budget adjustment to increase the police department's FY24 budget in the amount of $146,335 and to declare city-owned property as surplus.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any questions on consent agenda items before we get a motion? Or, yes, Ms. Rice-Sanders. Your mic isn't on.
I have a question for, what am I looking at here so late? The Department of Transportation on the RAISE, is that the the
RISE grant?
Yeah, well, I think it's RAISE. Rebuilding American Infrastructure, Sustainability, Equity. I saw the list of projects, and since we are waiting on this, what is that that we're waiting for that you have to do through an engineering company? Okay. It says that we did not complete all of the components of the grant, so we have to go through an engineering company. Since we have to go through an engineering company to get the cost benefit that we did not provide for the grant, I would like to see some revisions added into that, one being the East Willow Street. East Willow Street is being used quite a bit. There's buses that come in and out of that street 3-4 times a day and just beating up the street. That needs to be added to the infrastructure, and also Gum Street and East Jackson Street. So I'm asking that those be considered as part of this project. Thank you.
Other comments from council? No.
May I pull an agenda item within the consent agenda for a separate vote, not a separate discussion?
Repeat, please.
May I pull an item from the consent agenda for a separate vote, not a separate discussion?
Sure.
I'd like to pull 7.8, please.
7.8. 8 for separate vote. Okay. Mr. Lose.
Would you like a motion?
No other questions from council? Any questions from citizens? Motion, please.
I move that we adopt consent agenda items 7.1 through 7.7.
Okay, is there a second? Mr. Hill?
I second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Kilman,
Yes.
Councilmember Los,
Yes.
Councilmember Maxwell,
No.
Councilmember Rice Sanders,
Yes.
Councilmember Doherty,
Yes.
Councilmember Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes, and that motion passes. Now 7.8. Motion, please. Mr. Los,
I move that we adopt consent agenda item 7.8.
is there a second? Ms. Rice Sanders.
I second the motion.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Kilman,
No.
Councilmember Los,
Yes.
Councilmember Maxwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Rice Sanders,
Yes.
Councilmember Doherty,
Yes.
Councilmember Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes, and that motion passes. We'll go to general business of the City Council. Item 8.1, please.
Item 8.1 is a resolution approving and a resolution denying the Glisson subdivision. On behalf of the Glisson Family Trust, William Bollinger has submitted a subdivision plat for property at 800 to 900 block of East Grand Avenue. Proposed lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 are zone BPL planned business. Lot 5 is zone PUD planned unit development. Since more than 4 lots are proposed, City Code categorizes this as a major subdivision. The subdivision is primarily a proposed division of land into smaller parcels. The only development plan for the property at this time is a standalone Domino's Pizza store to the west of the Grand Avenue Mall, which is proposed Lot 2, which is in the site plan review process with the city at this time. The Planning Commission voted unanimously 7-0 to recommend approval of the subdivision at their February 7th meeting. Attached for council review are the proposed final plat and topo of the land, staff report, a resolution approving the subdivision, and a subdivision agreement.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve item 8.1? Ms. Kilman.
I move that we adopt a resolution approving the Glisson subdivision.
Is there a second? Mr. Hill.
I second.
Any discussion, council? Any citizen discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Kilman,
Yes.
Councilmember Los,
Yes.
Councilmember Maxwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Rice Sanders,
Yes.
Councilmember Doherty,
Yes.
Councilmember Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes, and that motion passes, and we'll go to item 8.3. Mr. Williams.
Item 8.3 is an ordinance amending Title 16, Chapter 9, Section 6 of the Carbondale Revised Code addressing operational procedures at Poplar Camp Beach. So the beach at Cedar Lake has historically been open 7 days a week from Memorial Day to Labor Day. In recent years, it's become more and more difficult to hire certified lifeguards. The Carbondale Revised Code, Title 16, Chapter 9, Section 6, addresses public use of city-owned property at the beach. Staff recommends revising the city code to remove the requirement for certain lifeguards and permit the public to swim at their own risk on the property. The beach would still be staffed with seasonal workers for safety and monitoring. Safety equipment will be available, user fees will still be collected, and concessions and restrooms will remain open. This will allow city full control over operational hours to keep the beach open 7 days per week. Over the last several years, every effort has been made to increase staffing levels, but we've seen very little success. Due to the challenges in achieving full staffing, the beach has only been able to be operated 4 to 5 days a week. In addition, the recreational master plan was presented to the council last year. It includes capital investments at the beach to include upgrades for the restroom and concessions. Council direction will help guide staff in planning and prioritizing future projects at Cedar Lake. The proposed additions are in Exhibit A. I was asked a question today for reference. We're not aware of a life-saving CPR event ever occurring at the beach. So at this time, staff recommends adopting an ordinance amending Title 16, Chapter 9 of the Revised Code, Carbondale Revised Code, addressing operational procedures at Poplar Camp Beach.
Is there a motion? Is there Mr. Doherty?
I would move the council adopt an ordinance amending Title 16, Chapter 9 of the Carbondale Revised Code addressing operational procedures at Poplar Camp Beach.
Is there a second? Ms. Gilman.
I second the motion.
Okay, any discussion from council? Ms. Rice-Sanders.
Yes. I was looking at the beach, and it seems as though we're recommending changes about $400,000 for the entire project. Is that correct?
Into the mic, please.
Is that correct?
That number's probably right with the Cedar Lake plan that we presented last year.
Yeah,
there were a bunch of upgrades, but we've held off on all that because the attendances can continue to decline. We want to present this to you before any decisions are made to spend more money out there.
Okay, and how much money is the beach bringing in? I read something about 10 passes that you can get for $30, $20, or 20 passes for $30 and $250 coming in. Then you have the fishing event, and we still have that, and the archery activity. We don't have that anymore.
The archery is in the proposed plan.
In the proposed plan, okay. And so how much income does that beach bring in?
I believe historically it's around $7,000 a year. Is that right, Eric? Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Eric Stead. I'm the Cedar Lake supervisor. So to answer your question real quick, generally our total revenue is $15,000 to $20,000. That's revenue. So.
And that's for the summer season, or the entire year?
That is so that's just from May, Memorial Day through Labor Day.
Okay.
And that's just at the beach. So that's not,
right.
Yeah, that's not our fish off revenue or anything.
So what are we proposing in order to generate revenue at this beach?
Well, as far as generating revenue, there's nothing proposed to do that. All we're talking about is being able to operate the beach without certified lifeguards on duty, so that it would be a swim at your own risk facility, and then we could it'd make it easier for staffing. It's not to say that we can't operate the beach with lifeguards or have lifeguards on staff, but being able to operate the beach without certified lifeguards would really make it a lot easier for us to keep that open 7 days a week.
Okay, so we're looking at a decision of having lifeguards there versus not having lifeguards there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so Ms. Rice-Sanders, to answer your question too, this wouldn't generate more revenue, but we would reduce our expenditures by having all the additional staffing to keep the beach open 7 days a week.
7 days a week.
We would be able to open it 7 days a week without lifeguards. We just wouldn't have to staff up and hire 10, 12 lifeguards from the summer.
Okay. So let me be clear. So you are saying, I know you gave some figures for lifeguards, and so the recommendation is to employ the lifeguards or to not have the lifeguards?
Well, it's to not require certified lifeguards. We could still have staff out there if we needed to, just provide some and we would have even seasonal staff at least checking on the beach, but not having that requirement. And there's other lakes locally. I know Lake Glendale does the same thing. Wren Lake has 2 beaches that they don't require lifeguards. And is there something else too, Eric? Is there another beach or another facility?
Well, there's the beach at Crab Orchard Lake.
Crab Orchard, too.
Yeah. And I called around to all of them. None of them require lifeguards.
None of I know there are a lot
all the
of them
pools
that
do, but
you,
none of
you
them
just swim at your own risk.
Right.
Right.
Other questions from council? Mr. Hill.
More of a statement. I really wouldn't feel comfortable to saying yes to that recommendation. One, from when addicts used to take us to the beach when we were younger. People have almost drowned, and they did, well, I guess they technically drowned if they had to perform CPR on them. So I wouldn't say yes to that. And also me being a former supervisor at the splash park days to where we had to close when we didn't have enough lifeguards. I felt okay with that it wasn't a potential that people would drown without a certified lifeguard being there. So I would rather for us to stay at the 4 to 5 days being open than being open 7 days a week without certified lifeguards.
Other comment, Mr. Lose?
Between the two of you, you may have already answered this question, but I want to be sure. Is the proposal that we would just do away with lifeguards, or is it that we would have lifeguards as much as we could, but on those days where we just simply we don't have the staff to do it, then we would go ahead and be open without the lifeguards?
As of right now, we haven't nailed down our plan, but what this would do is allow us to operate without lifeguards. I'm assuming at this point we would continue to hire lifeguards, but being able to staff the beach with regular seasonal staff in the event we don't have lifeguards, which we won't. We'll try, but we won't. So,
well, my feedback on that. Well, go ahead.
Well, the other thing I was going to say too is, we've been talking about the cost of staffing, but the other cost is, there's a significant amount of time of staff placing ads and interviewing and hiring people and making sure they're certified to only come out and work a handful of hours and not show up. And it's becoming more and more difficult. And it's not just us. We hear this all over the state from people that operate pools and beaches and those facilities. For whatever reason, I guess young people aren't as inclined to be lifeguards in the summer. So it's just a problem everywhere. But there's also a cost associated with trying to get the staff levels up. And we spent, like last summer, a lot of time, like throughout the summer even, trying to hire staff to keep the beach open.
Well, my feedback here would be that if the plan is that we're going to make every effort to staff up with lifeguards and have them there 100% of the time, but we know that sometimes that's not going to be possible, so we're going to have them there as much as we can, knowing that there's going to be some times where we'll operate on a swim-at-your-own-risk basis. I'll vote for that. If the plan is, the proposal is we're just doing away with lifeguards, then I'm with Mr. Hill. I'd be against that. And I should point out too that there was a mention made that maybe there hasn't been many incidents where someone's had to be pulled out. But I swim out there sometimes, and I've seen the lifeguards holler at people when they're getting out of line. And so, it may be that their presence prevents incidents that without them might get worse. Now, maybe you could have somebody else out there, like a beach boss or whatever that hollers at people. But, somebody needs to be doing that.
The plan would be we would always have staff on site.
But not lifeguards.
Wait.
Not necessarily certified lifeguards.
But not what?
Not necessarily certified lifeguards.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, Mr. Doherty.
I provided comments when we were presented with the the Cedar Lake Master Plan and what the proposals were for the beach and the upgrades. And I just didn't feel spending upwards over $500,000 to make improvements to the beach whenever it generated $15,000 to $20,000 a year in revenue, and sometimes it took twice that expense, that amount for lifeguards, and so. And part of that reason is that we have the splash park now in this community. And the citizens of Carbondale proper have access to the splash park and a very nice swimming facility there. I've always questioned the people who go to Poplar Camp Beach in terms of, are we subsidizing a swimming hole for people who don't necessarily live in Carbondale and doing that with our city funds? So in the long run, I don't support operating a beach there. And I don't support spending more money than what we take in to operate that. And having lifeguards there does just that. I have no problem. I think it's pretty common, as you've illustrated throughout the region, that beaches swim at your own risk, and I have no problem having that operation there. But I'm one person and would go along with the desires of the rest of the council.
Other comments? Ms. Maxwell.
What are the requirements for a lifeguard?
Certified Red Cross lifeguard. So it's a Red Cross certification, which is 20 hours of training, I believe, and $250 generally.
And now my comment is, I wouldn't be comfortable without lifeguards out there. And I don't know how many of you here in the audience or up here has had to see a child drown, but I have. So I think I've lived up here 25, 30 years. I didn't even know the beach was there. Maybe it needs to be more marketed more better to know that there's even a beach there. And I think somehow it needs to be a lifeguard out there, because you'll never know what it's like to lose a child because they drown. So I know it's like not happening in other places, but that doesn't stop the possibility that it could happen here.
Other council comments? Okay, citizens' comments? Okay, just so we're clear, the proposal is that we will hire a lifeguard, but they would not necessarily be Red Cross certified, correct?
In the proposal, isn't it just
Yes.
we won't be required to have lifeguards on duty?
Okay. Ms. Gilman.
Which, as staff is telling us, is the only way we will get a lifeguard there, because we're having trouble hiring Red Cross certified lifeguards. So I also understand Jeff's position. I'm in favor of these changes. I think it makes the most sense.
Okay. Ready to vote? Mr. Lose.
So I'm gonna ask, I guess, Mr. Williams, how should I vote here? Because if you're gonna if you're gonna try to staff it up as best you can, and I know sometimes there's not gonna be lifeguards there, I'm for that. If you're just doing away with lifeguards entirely and you're not gonna bother with trying to get them out there, then I'm gonna vote no. How should I vote? I don't know what your plans are.
Well, yeah, I can't tell you how to vote, Mr. Lois.
But you can tell me what your plans are.
You heard, I mean, Eric just shared. Eric, if you want to go up and reiterate what, the reason that this has been brought forward, if that's okay.
So refresh me on the.
Well, okay, let me just ask you this: Will you hire a lifeguard? Will you advertise for lifeguards?
We will advertise for lifeguards.
Will you hire them if you get applicants?
Yep.
Will you budget for it?
Yes.
But if you don't have enough to operate 7 days a week, you'll go ahead and operate. Some days there won't be lifeguards.
That's exactly
Most days
right.
there will.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll vote yes on that.
Okay, other questions?
I'm Tony Harrison, Director of Utilities with the city. I just wanted to add, if it may help to clarify. So our plan was the revisions for the code state that it changes from a requirement to have lifeguards to state that we may have lifeguards, which allows us to keep the beach open 7 days per week, to not inconvenience the public. And then as far as the financial implications, it's basically not an impact financially to beach revenues. If we're not able to get lifeguards, the intent was we would increase seasonal staff so that we would always have observation still, basically for safety at the beach, but not necessarily lifeguards. So the plan with the budget on personnel, if we see a reduction in lifeguards, we should see a reciprocal increase in seasonal staff for observation.
Mr. Hill.
But can they intervene though? Because they're not certified to intervene or to do anything. They can only observe and call 911. and by the time they get there, they're most likely dead. So,
right, yeah. So,
go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah.
So they would be permitted to intervene. Granted, that's a risk on the city from a workers' comp liability, but if you see somebody in trouble and you rescue them, there's generally immunity in the state of Illinois for most acts like that. Plus, swimming in an open body of water that is accessible, there is no legal liability on a municipality or a government body concerning that. But doing this doesn't prevent, or having certified lifeguards there or having seasonal workers who are observing doesn't prevent somebody from doing life-saving measures to get them out of there. And I would probably recommend to Mr. Williams that our seasonal staff, we could probably partner with John A. Logan or the American Red Cross to provide AED certification and CPR training, which it's pretty simple to do. It's a few-hour training. I'm certified in both of those, and it was like a $75 class, and it was actually paid for by my church as something to have available for the people there. So I think that would be something I would recommend, that at least if we're going to have seasonal staff there, they have some sort of training, and that's something that the city could easily provide in a partnership with John A. Logan, who does provide that.
But that wouldn't be a decision that's made tonight, would it? No.
Would.
So, yeah, I still wouldn't feel comfortable. No.
Okay, any other comments from council? Okay, roll call, please. I'm sorry. Could you repeat the motion?
Adopt an ordinance amending Title 16, Chapter 9 of the Carbondale Revised Code, addressing operational procedures at Poplar Camp Beach.
We good? Are we, Ms. Rysander,
Is that a motion?
The motion's already been made and second.
Okay, I'm confused, but okay.
Okay,
right.
What's your question?
The question, they're saying to operate it, but I thought the decision was whether we were going to operate it with lifeguards or not to operate it, and just allow them to swim at risk. But we
use your mic.
So we are saying we're going to hire lifeguards.
Let's repeat that one more time.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you need clarity? No? Anyone else? Okay. Are we ready to vote? Or do we need more discussion? No? Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Kilman?
Yes.
Councilmember Lose?
Yes.
Councilmember Maxwell?
Yes.
Councilmember Rice-Sanders?
No.
Councilmember Doherty?
Yes.
Councilmember Hill?
No.
Mayor Harvey?
Yes, and that motion passes. Next on the agenda, please don't.
I heard that.
Item 8.4, please, Mr. Williams.
So 8.4 is to approve a proposal to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Jackson County and City of Murfreesboro to purchase, remodel, and operate an animal control facility. So the mayor has asked me to keep this really succinct, and so we've contracted with the Humane Society for many years. Beginning in the spring of 2023, we were notified that they were no longer going to contract with us. We were able to get back into a contract. However, the previous 3 years, we had paid $68,000 a year, $71,000, and then almost $77,000 a year for their services. They had raised the price to $120,000. Our city attorney was able to get that down to $90,000, which is still substantially higher than any of the previous years. And then coupled with that was more restrictions, taking fewer animals, And for several months now, they've actually asked us not to bring animals to the shelter. So we have to find other locations. So the city responds to about 600 animal impoundments a year. So it is something that we actively monitor in the community. Jackson County and Murfreesboro are experiencing the same issues with Humane Society, and so all of us have been looking at a different option. Jackson County has located a facility about halfway between Carbondale and Murfreesboro. It's 6,500 square feet. And the best part is it's got a little over an acre of land. It may be a surprise to people, but our animal control folks actually pick up horses, goats, pigs, all kinds of livestock animals regularly. And so this would give us the ability to keep them in a pasture until we can get them placed somewhere. And so we've worked up a proposed budget on the property. All in, it would cost about $1 million to buy the property and to remodel it, so it's turnkey. We would eliminate $191,000 a year in costs we're currently given to the Humane Society, and it would give each of us access. So the intergovernment agreement would define all those costs, how we share those costs, future staffing, all those types of things, so we would make decisions collaboratively, anything that involved the finances of the facility. So at this time, what we really need from council is we've been talking about this for a while. The property is still listed. They're still getting people looking at it. And so we need to really get it under contract so we can go through a due diligence period to work through the intergovernmental agreement. So at this time, we're asking that council discuss this and approve us moving forward with at least securing the property and then developing an intergovernmental agreement, which you all will consider at a later date.
Thank you. Ms. Kilman.
So I want to be very clear. I have a lot of opinions on this, but they are incredibly biased because I have a conflict of interest on this matter, and so I'm going to be recusing myself and abstaining from likely the discussion and the vote.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Mr. Doherty. Can we do a motion first and then get discussion?
I'll make a motion to discuss.
Okay.
Move the council approve a proposal to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Jackson County and the city of Murfreesboro to purchase, remodel, and operate an animal control facility.
Is there a second? Mr. Hill.
I second.
Okay, discussion. Mr. Doherty.
So I like this idea in terms of working with the county and city of Murfreesboro and doing a joint venture here. And in general, I like the location because it's centrally located between Carbondale and Murfreesboro in the center of the county. However, there's some residences around this property. And I think anybody would be somewhat concerned to have a dog pound facility located next to them. Have we thought about this? I mean, I hate to use the word environmental impact, but there's an impact here. Or am I off base? Or is this something I shouldn't worry about?
Well, it's something we talked about, and we visited the site. There is one property adjacent to it. This property was formerly, they had kilns there, and they made ceramics and things, and I don't know how much traffic they hit in and out. There's right-way shelter is really close as well. And it's in the county, and there's, as you know, there's no zoning. So there's really no requirement for us to notify anyone. But I agree, being a good neighbor, we should at least disclose the fact, I think, if it goes through, that let them know what we're doing. But the building is, in my opinion, it's far enough away that would the house, if they heard barking dogs and stuff, probably. But I do think there's enough of a buffer that I wouldn't foresee it being that intrusive.
Other council comments? Mr. Lose.
It sounds like from the text of the item that the Humane Shelter is not really all that enthusiastic about staying in business with us. Is that right? Have they been asked about this and what they want?
Yeah, I can let the chief talk more about it if he wants to. It seems like there's been, first of all, there's been some management issues there too. There's been a lot of staff turnover. The board has turned over. And frankly, I without just reading between the lines, I think there's been some tension in the past with the management of the Humane Society and the personalities like either our animal control officer, maybe the other animal control officers, that's fueling some of the, I don't know, tension among the groups. But yeah, what we have thought for the last couple of years of the way things are going is none of us have been surprised at this outcome. We all sense that at some point we would be asked to not bring animals, or the Humane Society would not be open. And the building's in terrible shape. I mean, they really need a new building.
Mr. Lose.
And then it sounds like this is kind of a preliminary step, and then depending on how the negotiations go, we may or may not be moving forward.
Yeah, so tonight, if what we're wanting is just some approving us to move forward with the county. The county's executive committee or their land committee is hearing it tonight. They've been aware of this. Murfreesboro is considering it tonight as well. So tomorrow we'll know if everybody's on board. At this point, all we really want to do is get a contract on the property with contingencies in there that we need a due diligence period to work through all these things. We just want to be able to tie the property up.
Ms. Maxwell.
I understand we need some place for the animals to go. But today, a young lady came to my office. She's pregnant. She's homeless. I have a problem with us trying to spend this amount of money on animals when we got people sleeping outside on the ground.
Ms. Rice-Sanders.
I had a question. Our intake of fees, can you let me know what that means? Our intake of fees, I don't know what fees are, $90,000, and I think Murfreesboro may have been $35,000, and Jackson County is $60,000, and so we pay out more fees, or what is the fees?
Yeah, so the fees we pay the Humane Society are for them to basically take animals from us.
What?
For them to accept animals that we pick up for whatever reason.
So we spend more money with that, okay.
Because we bring more.
We bring more.
Yep.
So would we have that same percentage in operating that facility?
Well, yeah, arguably we would have to.
We would have 50%, and maybe they would have the other.
We would have to work through that with the current volumes. Correct.
Okay.
But the thing that we like about it, and the others as well, is with us owning the facility, we would no longer have restrictions. So we wouldn't have to worry about the Humane Society saying, well, this month don't bring any. You can only bring in 4 animals, or you can.
So they're saying that we can bring in 15 or something a month, but we bring.
In some months, the last several, they've told us not to bring any because they've had staffing issues.
So we have over 600 that we bring in
annually.
A year. Okay. Yeah.
Other questions from council? Questions from citizens? Comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Jennifer?
Oh, yeah, we do have a motion, correct?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I thought so.
I have your abstention.
Okay.
Councilmember Lose?
Yes.
Councilmember Maxwell?
No.
Councilmember Rice-Sanders?
Yes.
Councilmember Doherty?
Yes.
Councilmember Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Harvey?
Yes, and that motion passes. And item 9 is adjournment of the city council meeting. Good night, everyone.